I'm sorry. And call on the budget hearing at this time for a roll call vote, please. Machine is open.
I'll get back from you later. Okay.
One more person needs to check in.
Somebody.
Now 2 people.
2 people.
Need to check in.
One. All members are present. At this time, we will stand for the pledge and suspension of prayer. Mr. Rousseau, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we'll follow the agenda as presented. Mr. Surveyor?
Yes, sir. Y'all can have it again.
No audio.
No audio.
Is all I'm saying.
I hear you.
Go ahead.
Got it? Okay.
Just hit it.
Hey,
Okay.
okay, that's, I hear it. Basically, y'all have an agenda now. You should all have one. This is a preliminary agenda. I had a few people call and said that they couldn't come to these times, so we'll kind of jump around when they come. I'll let y'all know that they're here. This is totally, any way y'all want to do this, we can. Right now, I have each department head, supervisors, coming in at different times. If y'all don't want to do that, we can change that around. It's up to you. But that's kind of the way we have it. Also, we need to discuss how we want to do amendments. When we bring up amendments, do we want to wait and we keep track of them and do them all at the end? Or do y'all want to do them as we go? Or we can do them, as we go through the revenues, make revenue amendments, and then the expenses, do the expense amendments. It's up to the council, whatever y'all wish. Y'all just tell me what y'all want to do. I mean, it's a tracking thing. I mean, if we do the amendments as we go, I mean, I can keep track of it and tell you where we stand, or we could just do them all at the end. It's up to you. But this is pretty much, the way we're going to go through it. The first thing I'd like to do is turn it over to Mr. Cormier, and he can...
Mr. Rousseau has a comment.
Well, if you can turn it over to Mr. Cormier, that's what I was suggesting, that we start with the budget message.
Right.
Good morning to all of you. I have included in the budget, I have my 2018 budget message dated October 26th, 2017. And I won't read through it, but just a general overview is this, that we put some time into crafting this 2018 budget. As I stated at the last council meeting, the parish still has some of the highest debt payments that it has to make in its history, just shy of $9 million for 2018. The parish still has we don't have the revenue that we have had since 2008. However, one thing that we will discuss some is that in this 2018 budget, the proposed budget, we were overly, I think, conservative on one point, which was, I think we have oil and gas set at $51.50 a barrel. Louisiana sweet crude, which is a higher quality type crude, when I checked just last Friday's today, was at $65 a barrel. So the $51.50, we'll discuss that a little later, is too low, given what the price is, and given the administration's, U.S. administration's current policies, which are more friendly to oil and gas. That's regarding revenues. In this proposed budget, the manpower shortages that we've had, unfortunately, will continue somewhat. This 2018 budget does attempt to lessen or begin to try to address some of those manpower shortages. So we do have some, trying to rehire some people to address some of the manpower shortages. It's not, we won't be at 100% in this 2018 proposed budget, but we're a little closer to where we were before. And that will help with the delivery of services to the people, to our constituents. The GMO fund is smaller than it has been in years past, again, because of the almost $9 million debt payments and the revenue being in not what it was about 10 years ago, but we are moving in the right direction. The capital, that is regarding the operating budget. Our capital improvement budget is not very existent just because of, again, the debt payments we have to make, and because of somewhat lesser or lower revenues than have been received in the past years. So with that, I'll tender it back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, I guess at the beginning of this budget hearing, we ought to come to a method of how we're going to move forward. I believe that we need to probably look at revenues and determine how much revenue we're going to all agree on before we start going to the expenditure side of the budget. I read the message, the budget message, and although I believe that maybe the price of oil is increasing somewhat from looking at the finance reports, as the price went up, so did the checks go down. So that tells me that we have a production issue as well as a pricing issue, and I'll leave that to the experts to give their opinion, but that's what I got out of reading the finance reports. The other thing is, I think that we should all be cautious of is that when you look at what we are facing in this budget, we are looking at probably $8.5 million worth of one-time BP revenue to balance this operating budget. I believe that number is correct, and if I'm not there.
The 5 million is the 5 million, Councilman Roussel, is a recurring fund that we will receive for the next 5 years. And that's, you're correct, there's another, I think, what is it, 3?
3 million. Another 3.
Yeah, and that is regarding to the what I believe to be a very overly conservative estimate on punitives.
So I'll continue my comments. The overall budget, as I see it, this has been a philosophical difference between the administration and my position about recurring revenues. In my discussions with the state legislative auditor, they have made it very clear, and I can go to my office and get you their opinion if you'd like, that the BP money is not a recurring revenue. It is a settlement, just as the tobacco settlement for the state was put in a special fund. It is not considered a recurring revenue. Now, looking at the budget, I'm not saying that we're not going to be forced to use it, but as far as recognizing it, in my opinion, as a recurring revenue, is a poor way of looking at the finances of this parish, knowing that the legislative auditor and many other people in the financial world do not look at settlements as recurring revenues. So I think that's just a basic philosophical difference that we have that we probably won't get past. But as far as this council goes, I think that, the recurring revenue issue is one that we probably need to move on, because I don't think we'll get agreement on it. But in the auditing department, we do not look at it as a recurring revenue source. So, having said that, I think we need to go back to looking at what we will recognize and what we won't recognize to be able to make this budget work. As far as...
Mr. Black had comments on that issue.
No, continue, Mr. Russo.
You take it out?
No.
You take your name out? Okay. Keep back in, Mr. Rousseau, please. Keep back in. All right, Mr. Rousseau.
on issues that we do agree on. We do agree on, at least I agree on, the fact that we are now, paying extremely high debt, $8.7 million a year. Had we not had that debt, then we could probably balance this budget on $48, $50 a barrel, providing that the decline in production doesn't continue. And so, while I agree on that with the administration, I don't agree on that the recurrent revenue source. The other issues that I have in the budget message is that, there's some statements in there about the Plaquemines-Port Harbour Terminal District, which was illegally segregated from consolidated Plaquemines Parish government. That's a pretty strong message to be sending in a budget message, and that while I probably agree that I would have preferred to see the consolidation continue, I don't see how the administration has taken anything at heart or legally to try to prove that. I did send an email recently asking the legal department to provide us with the legal opinion of the legal department as to why they believe this is to be the case. And I look forward to getting that legal opinion from the administration to either justify or not justify those statements in the budget message. As far as the budget itself, I believe it's an extremely challenging budget for us to sit here, and I would hope that we would be willing to sit here for as long as it takes to develop a document that we can feel comfortable with, that we are not going to be coming to the table every council meeting and working it as a massaging budget. I hope that we can sit down today and the next day and the following day if possible, so that when we agree on the workforce, we agree that we're going to maintain that workforce other than filling vacancies as they come available. So that would make our time more efficient for the upcoming year, make our agenda more user-friendly for those who are in the audience as well as for us, not knowing what we're going to vote on from meeting to meeting. And I'm hoping again, and repeating myself, that we can sit down and put a clear plan in place that we can live with for the next 12 months. So with that, I yield and reserve any further comments till later.
Thank you for those comments, Councilman Russo, and I'll cite the section 2.01 of the parish charter, and there are numerous other provisions that states quite clearly, the parish government shall have all the jurisdiction, powers, rights, privileges, and authority to conduct and operate the government of the parish and districts therein. And that is why when this charter was adopted by the people of Plaquemines, the people of Plaquemines chose a consolidated form of government. All districts means just that, all districts. And there's been a tendency, and I've requested several times, that we meet as a levy board district. We meet as some of these other districts. And those meetings have not occurred, and I'd like to see that happen this year, that we meet as a levy board district, which this council are the members of the levy board districts. And you have that power over those districts. And the point being is that the charter is clear. We're one government, one. We're united. So the perceived, desire to separate the government is unnecessary, and it's contrary to the charter. But that's in response to that, Councilman Russo, is where we got that straight from the charter on those issues.
So I can expect the legal department to write a legal opinion to that effect and also cite the court cases that this government has been involved in over the port issue for many years, knowing that the charter has been interpreted by courts over the years, and I'd like to see the final outcome of the legal opinions based on the charter and the legal opinions from the courts. The second thing is that I guess the budget message for the recurring revenue issue is just a basic philosophical difference between us.
Yes, and I respect your position.
Excuse me. Councilman Black?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do we expect any type of legal action to be taken from your office in regards to your interpretation of the charter, and that with this council as the sole governing authority of the port, Harbor and Terminal District, prepare itself?
Yes, we will be preparing, the parish attorney will be preparing a legal opinion pursuant to this charter, which the parish attorney has the power to do so. And we're expecting full cooperation, Councilman Black. I mean, this is something that, again, anyone can open up this charter, anyone can read just what I stated. And for over decades, this is the way our parish government functioned. It functioned as one. So, we all know that the history here is that, and as Councilman Russo referred to it, you had when in 2006, 7, thereabouts, there was a novel approach taken by a predecessor of mine who thought that he had full power and took a position, and I can show you the legal documents, where the former parish president said that he had more power than the council over this one district. And I don't agree with that. This isn't, some people on the council back then, and I was involved as parish council attorney, I thought it was a bit of an overreach, a bit of a power grab. Judge Canella's ruling that Councilman Russo referred to was quite clear that the council is the sole governing authority. And so I think we all agree on that. And this administration agrees with that. Heck, I was involved in a legal case. So, but I think what then happened next was there was a desire to, and I think we have to look at the long-term good as residents and citizens of Plaquemines and look at what has happened historically in Baton Rouge. And one can easily arrive at the conclusion of what potentially could happen here if we don't act as one government. And that is my concern, is that just for us to continue acting as we have acted for decades. This administration has no intention of trying to take over anything. You're the sole governing authority, but at the same time, when the audit committee wants, to get the budget and to get numbers from any district within the parish, they should be able to get it. And any argument to the contrary, that one district's segregated and separate from the rest, that doesn't correspond with the charter. So I'm looking to work with this council and for the good, long-term good of the parish, so that, as I've stated before, we don't set up any potential issues where we could be back in Baton Rouge again arguing or trying to fend off a hostile takeover. And that's the position this parish has taken from the days of as far back as the Petrovich administration, the Giordano administration, Roosevelt administration, all the way up to one administration that came along and tried to change that.
Any other comments on the message from the council? All right. Next, Mr. Surratt, move to the next item, please.
Yes, sir. According to the agenda, next thing is the fund balance summaries. There's a couple things that I want to go through too. There's a few things I want to explain to you guys in 2017 issues, as well as in 2018. Because anything we do in 2017, as you well know, before the end of the year, is going to affect 2018. There's been some issues with the BP the BP designation. I want to go through that, explain that to you. So, if you will, turn to the white tab, fund balance summary by year, fund balance. What you're going to see is the first thing is the 2018 total budget. Now, we changed these reports. We didn't change reports. We just added reports to your books. Because what happened since we did this proposed budget, we've had some items on the agenda that were passed. So that changed some of the fund balances on here from those items. So that's all it is. We just added two reports to your books. So now you have a white page and an orange page. 2018, 2017. Let's go to the orange or the salmon, whatever you want to call it, the second page, the second report. And look at the fund balances that we have in 2017 as of right now. If you go down toward the bottom, you'll see the fund balance for emergencies. It's $3,500,000, same fund balance it's been. That hasn't changed. The fund balance for self-insurance, also the same as it's been, $3,050,000. Bond indebtedness, $9,172,000. Now keep in mind, these are 2017 numbers, where we stand right now, currently. Tax watch sewer $0. The BP settlement, $10,982,200. FEMA projects is $1 million. And the FEMA revenue, this is the one where it's dependent on the Isaac projects. We had talked about this before. This is something we really can't touch. It's $10,127,000. Total designations is $37,841,000, and our unreserved and designated fund balance 2017 $1,164,000. Now that being said, I'm going to pass out some reports on the BP settlement and try to explain where we are right now. I'm going to try to keep up and bring these things up on the screens too so everybody can see. That doesn't have a book.
Councilman Mike, you want to move?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Keep back in here, Tommy.
Yeah, Tommy,
Yes.
I'm glad you gave this description because I think we're going to have a few questions on it in reference to the VP settlement fund. I mean, you have listed down as $10,982,000.
Right, that's correct.
How much of that $10,982,000, how much money do we actually have in the BP settlement fund?
Okay, that's why I put these two columns in. I'm going to go through each.
No audio.
How we got to where we are. If you look at the first line,
You got a key in.
if you look at the first line, we have it on this 2017 settlement revenue. On that? Yeah. Okay, there we go.
All right.
Okay, the first line, ordinance number 17129 was passed, and it recorded $25 million in BP settlement revenues. Now, that was $15 million that we're supposed to get the first payment, and the $10 million we're supposed to get October 1st, which we did not get, but we'll get to that. So actual cash, if you look on the next line, we actually received $15 million. Okay, wait. Bear with me. We're getting down. Okay. No, we didn't actually get the whole 15 million, but that was the settlements we were supposed to receive. Okay. So that's the revenues, 25 million and 15 million because the 10 million we didn't receive. Look at the next line. Legal fees and investigation fees. This amount we didn't budget for. We did not budget for this, and because is still in dispute. That number is still in dispute. However, it was taken out of the $15 million. So the amount that we received was 15 in cash now. $15 million minus $6,000,004 was actually 8 million, I don't have the, let's see, I got it right here. 8,564,944. That's how much in cash, that's how much went into the bank, that went into the BP settlement bank account. And it's still there, okay? Now, the next line, is just a budgeted number. We took out $9 million to go to the Del Chase Whitewater Treatment Plant project. Okay, so that $9 million came out of the $25 million budgeted that we put in originally. There was no cash there. We didn't take any cash out of that yet. The next thing is $5,017 budgeted. We actually took this money out for revenues for all the gas royalties that we were short in 2017. So we took those funds out. We did that by ordinance. And so that leaves you with the $10,982,000, which is the number that I showed you. Now, that's not what we actually have in the bank. It's not what we actually have in the bank because we thought we were going to get the $10 million, which we did not get yet. We actually have in the bank the $8 million that I said, and the $8 million and the $5 million is going to come out and go back to the pooled account because that money we transferred to the unreserved and designated. So basically, in the BP account, you have $3,500,000 in cash. But the fund balance designation is $10,982,000. Now, how do we fix that? I talked to Mr. Cormier. He said, we still, this stuff is still in negotiation. I asked, do you think we're going to actually get the $10 million this year? And he said, we're probably not going to get the money. So, what I'm proposing, you want to inject that?
Yeah, I do want to inject.
Okay.
Come on.
Let me say something. I have everybody on, so if you just tell me, look at me, whatever, and then it'll be your turn to speak, rather than going back and forth to keying you in, cueing you in. Every mic is on.
All right.
But we want each other to respect to have someone else want to come in. Just, I'll look and check and say who's next. If you don't, that's agreeable.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right, so this is the problem I have, and this is the conversation we had at the last council meeting, and I think you were on speakerphone. So we received $25 million, like you said. The problem is all that money is encumbered. Well, appropriated. We appropriated out of $25 million. We reduced $10 million, then reduced $6.435 million. Right. $6.435 million is the legal department's escrow.
Right.
Then the $10 million is still being held by the federal court. So that's $16.435 million that we do not have access to. That leaves us with the remainder of the $8.564 million. Out of that $8.564 million, we passed two ordinances, 17-130 and 17-140, which then appropriated over $14 million of money. So we're in a negative balance on the BP fund. Is that incorrect?
No, and that's
Okay.
you're on the way back.
So we've appropriated $14 million out of the BP fund, when in all actuality, we only have access to $8.564 million.
Right, but
But we can't make assumptions that we're going to receive the $10 million from the court. We can't make assumptions that we're going to receive the $6 million out of the escrow that Mr. Barney put it in.
so let's go ahead, let's go down to the next one, I said proposed adjustments. And this is what I'm asking, we proposed for 2017, and you have an ordinance on the table right now for the $6,000,004, which is the legal fees. And I have another ordinance that I'm going to ask you to introduce, so we can take out the $10 million. So if you look at the $6,000,035 is the legal fees. I'm going to ask you to pass an ordinance in 2017 to take those legal fees out. Even though it's still in dispute, we need to take it out of 2017 because it's just like I said, it's distorting exactly what we have. The $10 million, I'm asking you to take that out also, because as I said, Mr. Cormier says he does not think we're going to receive it this year. So, go ahead.
Let me qualify that. If we were to turn over the maximum, which according to the parish attorney, this law firm from New Orleans is demanding over $6.4 million in attorney's fees, which is an outrageous claim given that the limited amount of work that they did, given that they also made money off of one of the districts here in the parish. They also made money off of, I believe, the school board, and this was all the same work. So if we could receive, the judgment has been signed, it is clear, we will be receiving the 10 million. If we were to just hand them over almost $6.5 million, that would resolve the whole problem. I don't think, and this is the legal opinion I have from the parish attorney, we're fighting for the taxpayers on this. Now, if we decide that we want to get want to just give them the $6.5 million in attorney's fees, we could probably resolve this whole thing before the end of the year. This is a question, though, of how vigilant and how zealously are we going to defend taxpayer money. So it goes down to that. Do we want to fight for every penny of taxpayer money, or do we want to just go along to get along? And that's pretty much the way that this the posture of this proceeding is. But the judgment is signed, it's clear, we will be receiving this money. The one question is the over $6.4 million that they're claiming that they earned in attorney's fees, and that is the question.
Councilman Black?
So Tommy, your proposal is to then remove the transfer of the $5 million that we voted for, 17,140?
No. The proposals are, you see, it says 2017 proposed adjustments from there on down.
Right, what I'm saying is you would have to remove that to come up with that balance.
No.
You would be over the balance.
No, because if you look at, if I start with the 10, if I start with the 10 million, we're going to take out the $9 million also. The $9 million that we transferred to the project,
Right.
we're going to take that out also. So basically, if you take out, you start with the 10. If you start with the 10 million, you take out the legal fees, the 6.4 million. You take out the 10 million that we don't think we're going to receive. And you take out the 9 million, we take it back from that project and put it back in BP. That's going to leave you with a balance of $3,547,000, which is the amount that's in the bank.
All right, this is my position on it. I agree with the president, and I don't agree with him on one thing. I agree with him that we will eventually receive the $10 million. I think that the federal courts should transfer to 25th JDC, and I think sometime next year we'll get that $10 million release. I do agree with that, but I don't think it will be until next year. I do not agree that we will receive the 6. I don't want to go into too much detail with that because we are in litigation, but we have different opinion on that. What I will say, I do not want to jeopardize the water treatment project and remove that money. I mean, that's something that we worked hard to do because that is beneficial parish-wide for one of our essential things, which is water.
Well,
I did have an issue, and I voted against it at the time, is the transfer of the unreserved, undesignated, which was the $5 million. So I'm fine with taking that out, but I can't support taking out the 9 for the water treatment,
well,
which leaves us with a negative balance.
Excuse me 1 second. Correction, it's West Bank, not parish-wide. It's only in the West Bank that the program has been proposed for. Parish-wide includes East Bank, but we're not including this proposal for this water line system.
now let me bring this up. That water line project, it was $12 million was the total orders. $3 million of it came from the water and sewer fund, and $9 million came from the BP fund. In this budget also, we changed some of the funding from unreserved from the general fund side to the water and sewer fund of $3 million. So there's $6 million in this budget in that, we're going to get to that when we get to the capital projects. But this is, just like you said, we have a negative amount if we don't take that money back from the And what we can do is put the money right back in there when we do get the 10 million. But, we got to do something in 2017 because we're going to have an issue at the end of the year. Will be a budget issue if we leave the 10 million in as a revenue and the 6 million as the league fees if we don't take care of that.
Councilman, finish. Councilman Black?
Yes, I'm
Okay, Ms. Williams, then Mr. Councilman Levine, then Mr. Russo, in that order, please. Ms. Williams?
Yes, I just have my only fear is if we remove that 9 million, are we jeopardizing that project? That's my main concern here. I do think that once we get the 10, we may be able to put it back in, but will we jeopardize that project if we don't move on it?
That's something I can't answer.
That would be my concern.
Councilwoman Williams, we're all in favor of this, the Belle Chase water treatment plant. The question is that the revenue is not there, capital improvement. And this is where we had a difference of opinion, because if you remember, I was a proponent. Most long-term capital improvement projects, the prevailing financial theory is you can finance those because you can receive a long-term benefit such as 30 to 50 years from that project. So the financial theory is you finance a project like that over time because you're going to receive the benefit over time. But what we can't do is take, and at the time when this ordinance was passed, to use the BP money, one-time cash for the long-term capital improvement project, the federal judge had not tied up the 10. So this is something, it's not your fault, it's not my fault. This was a magistrate judge who tied up this money in the process of the fight over the almost $6.4 million, over $6.4 million.
I'm not pointing the blame at anyone. I do understand that it's an issue that arose after the ordinance was passed. But in regards to the long-term debt and loans, we've been waiting to hear something on this since 2015. And it's something that I think is a necessity for our parish and the residents of the West Bank, the entire West Bank of the parish. So therefore, it was my decision to try to utilize funds that were available at the time. We still haven't heard anything back as far as the loan goes, and here we are, almost 3 years after we've been trying to pursue this information.
Councilman Levine?
Sorry, first question, I got a couple questions. The first question is, with the 3.5 million left, we encumbered the 5 million to offset the debt, right? That's included in that ordinance that we passed.
That's correct. The 5 million, if you look at the top section, with the 10 million,
Right.
that's what it had actually having a designation. And the 3 million is actually what we have in cash. The 5 million is taken out. The 5 million is done at that point. Now, go ahead.
That doesn't affect, that's my main concern. The water project is a concern also, okay? My main concern is getting that $5 million just to offset the revenue. If we don't even encumber that,
We could
we're
get that.
in worse shape than we are.
We did that already.
Okay, so that, I just want to make
The
sure.
ordinance, the only way it's going to come out is if the council passes an ordinance to take it out.
Okay. Getting back to the water project, yes, it is a vital project for the West Bank, and I think it's well needed. Ms. Williams has documented. My concern is, if we don't have the 9 million, and maybe Mr. Cormier can answer this, do we try to finance or send out more bonds to get another project that we go in more debt? Or do we try to get the $9 million, cut our losses with the law firm, give them the $6 million, let them release our $10 million? My concern is, and I'm not going to go in a lot of legal terms, is that we may lose the case and owe them more money. Now, that has never been talked about. We keep saying we're going to get more money back from them for the 6.4. What happens if the judge rules and we got to owe them more money? Then we're in worse shape. So my suggestion was to cut the check, let them cut the check, give us our $10 million, and we can move on. So you have an answer for that?
Councilman Levine, that would be one way to handle the situation. give the attorneys fees of over $6.4 million, give them what they want, and move on. That would be one solution.
But we're not even exploring that.
It's pretty much giving them more than the maximum. But we certainly have had those discussions, but I tell you what, I'd like to discuss, if you'd like, that would probably be a discussion we could have in executive session. Probably be the best way to do that. And I'll look forward to that conversation.
Yes, moving past the legal fees and all, the fact that we are balancing the 2017 budget on the $5 million that we've already appropriated from one-time money is BP money, correct?
Correct.
So we can't really back up on that without putting another $5 million hole in the 2017 budget.
That's right. We had a whole $5 million, and yeah, that's what covered the whole, exactly.
Right, so taking that forward, I think that when we first opened up the meeting, I made the point that we have $8 million now of BP money in the budget to balance this budget. Should be something that everyone at this table should understand, that we are digging a hole deeper and deeper unless we get a handle on what we do. So when you're sitting up here putting more expenses without offsetting them within this budget, you're digging a hole deeper. So any movement that you make on this budget, I would encourage you to be moving money in this budget rather than adding money to the budget. And especially if we don't come to an agreement about if we're going to take and start off with the $8 million that we're talking about. So those are just some things that we should be thinking about every time we put an amendment on the table.
Ms. Williams?
You're saying 8 million, but we actually only have 3.5, correct, to work with after we took the 5 out?
No, that's last year.
Oh, okay, you're right, this is 17.
For
Okay,
2018.
Right.
We have another,
We had the 5 plus the 3 we already have, okay.
so the 5 plus the punitive damages that we don't have yet. I'm sorry, back and forth, but...
Okay, yeah, I got it.
So it's my understanding we had $8 million in this budget to make it balanced.
I'm gonna go to 18 whenever y'all ready.
Let's go to 18.
Okay. All right. So we still at the BP settlement fund. So now, if we pass the ordinance to take out the 10 million, and it takes the money from the project, and it puts in the legal fees of $6,400,000, we'll be at $3,547,000. Now, in this budget, the proposed budget had the 2018 settlement revenues of $5 million, which we're supposed to receive in 2018. Punitive damages settlement of $3 million, which is $8 million actual revenues for 2000. That's in this budget for 2018, and we're requesting that you transfer $5.5 million to the unreserved undesignated fund balance to balance the budget the way it is presented. So that will leave you with $6,047,144 if you left it the way it is. Now, that depends on you voting on the 2017 ordinances of the $10 million and the $6 million for legal fees. So that's where you would stand.
Councilman Janelle?
And yes, I'm worried about the $5 million, because if they're holding back $10 million, then the judges can also hold back the other $5 million until they get paid $6 million. So is that looking at, Mr. President?
Yeah. Thank you, Councilman Juneau. The other payments, I'm trying to think of the best way to answer the question. There was a novel, they're advancing naturally. These attorneys from New Orleans are advancing a very novel theory. Even on the most novel of theories, they won't get beyond that 10. It was we are filing something to release that, but I certainly, there's no legal basis whatsoever for them to hold up any of some of these other monies going forward. And that probably the most succinct way to answer it. And I guess this is something, and we definitely, we'll talk more in executive session, because as Councilman Lapine noted, there's a way to resolve this, and I welcome the input.
I just don't trust them.
Mr. Chairman?
Councilman Black?
Yeah, Tommy, just getting back to, I know the answer, just want clarification. On 2018, the settlement revenues, I'm not even gonna discuss the punitive damage revenues, I'm not even, I mean, that's a number that's just kind of drawn up from nowhere. But the settlement revenues, the $5 million, that you want to put into the unreserved, undesignated
Well,
for operational costs?
not exactly. First of all, it's gonna go into the BP money, but then, yes, we're asking to take 5.5 million out of this balance, transfer it to the unreserved undesignated.
Part of that is the punitive damages too, though, because we went and funded the vacancies once we put the punitive damages number in. So over 2 million of that would be vacancies.
But we'll get to that when we get to
Okay,
that.
I'm gonna say right now, no matter what you do, no matter where you put numbers, no matter what you figure out, I'm not voting to move any money out of the BP fund for any other use than what this council decided at the time. So there's no possible way I can vote to take another $5 million to move it to,
Then we're gonna have to go in this budget and find 5.5
because
million.
what you're asking us to do is to do what I think a lot of us have sworn not to do, was to take the BP fund money and just continue to bail the government out.
Mr. President?
Councilman Black, I appreciate your position, but then what is your response? What we're doing is, in effect, you've not answered the question of how their recurring debt. The almost over $8.7 million a year, that again, this council didn't run up this debt, but there's never been a recurring revenue that was found or created to pay off the debt. So, in effect, what's going on is some of these BP monies, you're correct, it's implicitly offsetting some of the debt, because if you go back to 2008, the mineral royalties that this parish received was over $50 million. Now, where that money went, I don't know, but we have an operating budget for the entire year of 2018 that's less than the 1 year mineral royalties in 2008. I think this year, what is it, 39 million? Change? For this year, the proposed. But it's less, and this, I think in this year,
42 million.
okay, so 42 million, so how, again, that's the cyclical nature of oil and gas. It's boom bust cycle. Now, we sunk as low as, I think, compared to 2008, when the parish received over $50 million in mineral royalties. I think last year was about a little over 13 million. Now, it's going back up. And we see that with the price of Louisiana sweet crude. But the point is that we've got a recurring debt, and we're going to be paying on this recurring debt. It's going to be over $8.7 million for the next 8 years that this parish government is going to have to pay. And so, again, I'm not blaming, I'm not casting blame, I'm just stating the reality that there's a recurring debt here, but for the recurring debt, we wouldn't have some of the problems we have here now.
Okay, let me address that, and I'm glad you brought up the recurring debt, because that was my exact rebuttal to what you just said. You said we have $8.7 million in debt currently.
No, that's incorrect. We have to pay.
I'm sorry, not in debt, we have 180.
The total debt is
180 something million. We have 8.7 we pay annually.
I think it's 170 or 169.
Okay, it doesn't matter, let's just say it's 175.
Yeah, so what I refer to, the over 8.7 million, is the debt service payments that we'd have to pay for the next, at least, I think, 8 years.
Okay, so getting back to my point is, so I asked the question, 169. So getting back, I asked a question a little while ago about taking the $9 million for the Belcher's water treatment improvements out of the BP fund, which is a one-time payment. Your response was
Long-term debt.
Your response was to take the $9 million, and instead of paying out of BP funds, is to go ahead and finance that project, which would add to the $8.7 million in payments, and it would also add to the long-term debt. So now instead of 169, we'd be at 178. So your solution was to take the $9 million for the Belcher's Water Treatment Improvement Project and add to the long-term debt. Now correct me if I'm wrong, but that's contrary to what your whole argument is from the time we started at 9 o'clock this morning. My point is instead of putting $5 million into the unreserved, undesignated for people to use for operational costs, employees, salaries, or whatever else, take that money and put it into capital improvements instead of putting it into the long-term debt. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, I may have missed something, but I thought that's what you said about 5 minutes ago.
It's an incorrect representation, Councilman Black. Let me describe the difference. If, and I think we agree, we all want this Belcher's water treatment plant. I don't think anyone is against it. I think everyone is for it. Now, you got two questions from there. One is timing of it, and we can take the position that if we wait until we have the money in order to begin, and two, then the other scenario is what was begun before this administration, which was to look at long-term financing. Now, and the reason why I brought that up is because, again, this is general financial theory, that if you have an asset that's going to appreciate over time in value, or the benefit will be received over a long period of time, say 50 years, then it is acceptable practice to finance that. Now, where did the $50 million in mineral royalties go in 2008? We don't know. But how is some of this debt run up? Those are questions that aren't before us today. But the issue is one of timing and two of a policy. So if you want to hold on that project, and when you talk, and you just brought up, and the second part of the question is, you brought up you expressed a desire to cut services. And I remember you stated, when you said about operations cost, because operations cost is what provides services. And Councilman Black, I remember at a meeting back, I think in July, when you stated that you did not care how much it cost, you wanted the grass cut on Highway 23. And this is the cost of having that grass cut.
Councilman Black, thank you. Let me just respond to that. I never once said cut services. Never once said cut services.
When you said cut operating costs, that's what it is.
I never said cut operating costs. Operating costs, I'm not saying cut them. Never said cut them. Cut them would be a reduction. I'm not saying reduce. I think everybody is pretty clear that we need to stay at least at this operating level. But I've called for the reorganization, et cetera, to better utilize our operations. But I never did once say cut. So let's not, throw that out there to the public that Councilman Black said cut. I never once said cut operational costs. What I did was ask a question about why are you recommending financing a $9 million project when you just bashed a former council and a former administration repeatedly for running up long-term debt, which you want to add another $9 million of long-term debt. Now, a couple of us in this council, I think Mr. Russo was one of the first ones to mention it, talked about self-financing. Now, if that's what you're talking about, if you want to bail out that way, that's fine as far as the water treatment project, because that's going to have some revenue in the long term where we could pretty much self-finance through that fund. So if that's what you're talking about with finance, then I agree, but I don't think that's what you're talking about. But I just want to clear up about the cut thing, then we move on, I'm done.
Yes, and Councilman Black, when we had the meeting down at the Port of Hawaii, it was discussed by USDA that there was a potential for even up to $9 million in grant money that could have been received. So what I was laying out was a potential solution to a problem. I wasn't necessarily endorsing it, but I will say that I do recognize there's a difference between good debt and bad debt. And that difference between good debt and bad debt is, with good debt, that would be financing an asset that you're going to receive 30 to 50 years of value from. And with the time value of money, over time, they keep printing more dollars, so the time value of money goes down. So when you finance an asset where you're getting, such as a bridge, such as a Belle Chase water treatment plant, over long term, that's a good investment, because the value of that service or the value of that infrastructure will go up in real cost. And so that's the distinction I'm making between good debt and bad debt. Bad debt would be financing something that's going down in value, such as a vehicle. I mean, to bring this down at the basic level, a mortgage on a house, if you invest in an area where house prices are going up, it's good debt. If you finance a car's value depreciates over time. So that's a parallel or analogy.
Councilman Burke, Councilman Lee.
I just have, I have one comment and just one question. And I agree with Mr. Juneau. I'd be very hesitant to rely on that $5 million in recurring BP funds, given the current litigation we're in right now with the $10 million. My question is, the $3 million in punitive damages, where did that number come from, and is it accurate?
Councilman Burke, there's a judgment signed by the federal court setting aside, I think it's, don't quote me on the number, it's been a while since I've seen the document, but I want to say it's over approximately $180 million, but don't quote me on that. It's been a long time. I don't have that document with me here today, but that money has already been set aside in a fund to pay these punitives. The only holdup has been that there's also a formula that Judge Barbier signed off on to determine the punitives. The only holdup is they're figuring out, we're definitely one of the primary parties, and we're good to go to receive it from that big fund of, I think, again, please, this is not an official number, I'm going off memory, could be wrong, of approximately $180 million, but the only question is whether or not, how many other parties have a claim to that amount, because the formula has, each party gets a percentage of the lump set-aside fund based upon what their compensatory damages were.
So that number could fluctuate plus or minus?
Yes, we chose a low number on the scale.
Ms. Williams and Ms. Solid.
Yeah, in regards to the $3 million from the anticipated punitive damages, I have the same concerns. Who's to say we're going to get anything near $3 million? How can we assume that we're going to get $3 million? We may only get $500,000. So we're anticipating on budgeting for funds that we aren't guaranteed to receive. As opposed to BP, we have a settlement. So I'm just, how was that $3 million derived? Was it just an estimate that you just assumed that we were going to obtain?
Thank you for the question, Councilwoman Williams. It was based upon the judge's signed order setting aside, and again, pardon me, my memory is going, I think it's $180 million. Don't quote me on that number. And then based upon how many people have claims, and Plaquemines Parish government definitely has a claim, we're definitely in line based upon the formula that Judge Barbier signed off on in the judgment.
So $3 million derived from. I understand what you're saying, there's X amount of people involved and there's X amount of dollars to be distributed, but how do you know who's going to be distributed what amount of money?
It's based upon the fact that our compensatory damages claim was one of the highest at $45 million that we received in judgment, and so we're using the $45 million and plugging it into that formula and looking at the 100, and again, I'm using the term 180 million. That number I'm going off memory. I'm sorry, I just don't have
Well, I
that.
understand.
But it's a set aside fund.
You see us budgeting money that we don't actually have.
Councilman Williams, we do that every year in every proposed budget because we don't have the tax money for 2018. So,
Sullivan?
Yes, I've been listening all morning, and I kind of agree with what Mr. Juno said earlier, to try and balance a budget predicated on assumptions and you know, it kind of leads me to think that we're playing Russian roulette with the budget. You know, I think we all agree that the Bella Chase Water Project is a vital project, but in my opinion, I think, you know, again, we are trying to make a call that the court may or may not do based on, you know, the $6 million that's in question right now. I remember some time ago that in regards to the water situation, that there's some funding that was available with the recreation, with the parks, ball fields at Bella Chase, and it was recommended that we utilize some of those funds. And it was disputed and it never materialized. You know, but again, I'm a proponent and a supporter of the project. But again, my final position is that I think we are entering dangerous water by trying to balance the budget on a lot of guesswork. You know, if the funding is not there, I don't think we should. You know, right now we're using other avenues to get the water down to the southern end of the parish on the West Bank. You know, to just balance that project on anticipated funding, I think it's sort of scary to me. So I think we should deal with real funding. And, you know, if we just push the project further down the road, or, you know, until the funding is there, but just to anticipate on anticipated funding, I don't know. And what brings to mind is just deficit spending, or if the funding is not there, we anticipate that we're going to get this. What if the courts, as Mr. Lapid said earlier, what if the funding, the court decide otherwise? Then you are in a greater hole than you were the first time. So that's my 2 cents on the whole issue.
Mr. Russell?
Yes, going back to the discussion about no source of revenue to pay this $8.5 million annual payment. I think that the public deserves to know that there was a source of revenue for borrowing this money and putting us in debt for 30 years, because that's what the note is. It's for a 30-year period. The revenue is all revenues that we pledge from this government, which is oil and gas revenues that are to be paid first and foremost before anything is paid, before we turn the lights on. So, knowing that we have that $8.5 million mortgage that we have to pay for 30 years, we start at $8.5 million in the hole. Now, they couldn't have borrowed the money without a revenue source, so we need to clear that up in the public's mind to understand that before we turn the lights on, we have to pay the mortgage. And if I'm incorrect on that, finance department can chime in and tell me. Now,
you're correct, 8.7 million, over 8.7 million.
So moving along, back to the discussion about the services. I'm reading the budget message, and it says, achieving these budget cuts requires significant reductions in operating services. Do you know what operating services were cut in this budget before we were given it?
What page are you referring to?
I'm referring to the budget message on page 1, first paragraph. I know that it was referred to, Mr. Black was saying cutting services, but the reality is that this budget says that to balance it, it says that achieving these budget cuts required significant reductions in the operating services and capital outlay items of numerous departments. So what services in this budget are cut that we may want to restore if we can find the funding?
principally the manpower, and that was in comparison to the budgets and the manpower that we had back before 2014.
Primarily manpower. What about the Council on Aging?
And the YMCA's Care Center.
Councilor Russo?
I just want to,
I'm sorry, you're not on, Tommy?
No, it's just blinking.
Try it. Try it now.
There we go. We can go through, the departments, as you know, as always, the departments request funding for each department. We have to go through and cut the funding back. What we tried to do was look at what the 2016 actual numbers were and cut back to those numbers. There's a report in here called the Administrative Amendments to Department Reports, and it shows each department and how much was cut based on what they asked for and what we cut out of their budget.
What they asked for 18?
What they asked for 18 and what we actually we cut. These are just the cuts. well, increases too if they were. It's an orange tab. It's called Admin Amendments to Department Requests. I mean, I don't know if you want to go to that right now.
we're still in broad discussion.
Right. I don't know if you want to go to that now. I'm just telling you that.
I'm trying to get a wrap around what the administration has proposed to us based on its budget message of cutting the services.
Right.
And in quick perusal of what section that you just mentioned, there's the Council on Aging in this as well. All of these are in here.
Council on Aging, I think there's a Care Center.
LSU,
Another YMCA. Correct.
But just to be clear, can I just, Mr. Russo, clarify one thing Mr. Russo said? Just 2 seconds.
Go ahead.
Just to be very clear, this council proposed no cuts, correct?
Well,
Okay,
this is-
hold on, Tommy. I understand, I'm getting to that. So, when the president claims that we're asking for cuts, especially me asking for cuts, I never asked for cuts, this council has proposed no cuts. This administration, in the 2018 proposal, has proposed numerous operating cuts, as Mr. Russo said and showed it in the message. So I just want to be clear that what this council is trying to do is actually go back to our current operating posture, and possibly.
Councilman Black, you made the cuts in 2016, 2017, so the cuts were made.
Yes, I have a question for the president. On the $10 million for the BP settlement, you said the judge signed off on it, so is that $10 million put in the escrow account? Or
You had two judgments here. One was the big picture settlement of the 45 million.
I'm talking about the 10.
Yeah, the 10 million, there was a subsequent magistrate judge when the New Orleans attorneys that are claiming that they earned over 6.4 million, they filed something to tie up that 10 million. And the judge signed the order allowing them to temporarily tie it up pending this outcome. Of course, the judge also signed a judgment ruling in our favor, sending it back to Plaquemines Parish Courts. So that's the status of that right now.
So the money in the meantime, is it put in any kind of account?
Yes, it's in I believe it's in a court, it's tied up in a court account.
Well, one view that is not an interest-bearing account. Such as a bank. An escrow account is not an interest-bearing account, you know?
I don't have to, would anyone legal know?
Right.
Can we come back and give them that information later on during the hearing?
Yeah.
We can find out, give them that information.
People need all the money they can get now.
Yes. I would ask that we kind of minimize our question, other than that, we're going to be here about the whole week, if not. So I'll revert back to Councilman Black, who had the last, and Mr. Roussel, if you have any other comments thereafter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would suggest that we move to make a decision on this fund balance, whether or not to utilize the BP funds and I think that's the starting point, because this is a significant either addition or reduction to the budget. I'm done.
Any other comments from anybody? Questions? Okay. Next.
Okay, so, just so we're straight on the BP settlement. You have, with the report that you have, there's 2017 ordinances there, that if we don't pass those ordinances, we're gonna have a definite issue with the budget for 2017. We assumed that we would get the $25 million. I mean, when we did this, we assumed we would get it, but we didn't get 10 million of it. So, if we don't get that by the end of the year, we're gonna have a budget issue. The $6 million the same way. The $6 million is an expense. They kept the money. So, we need to take it out. So, you got two ordinances in front of you. One is for the $10 million, and it's also reducing the project for the $9 million. And you'll have another one, which is the $6 million. I think that was on the table already. The $10 million has to be introduced. And I don't know, I'm sure Kim talked to you about all this, but I asked Kim if we could do a special meeting at the end of the budget hearings, whenever that is. And so we can, number one thing is to pass an ordinance to accept the budget, whatever amendments y'all put in it, and to introduce the ordinances for 2017 that we're going to need. And do that because we only have one council meeting left. So.
Mr. Russell?
So, this request to move the $9 million, or $10 million, can not be done during the budget hearing?
No, because this is a 2017 issue. This is a 2017 ordinance that has to be passed as an ordinance in 2017. Both of those ordinances you have there.
So we need to introduce this today and vote on it at a regularly scheduled meeting?
You introduce at the special meeting that we're going to have at the end.
Okay.
At the end of this, we can introduce it then.
Okay.
Introduce that one, and then like I said, the 6 meeting, if you wanted to vote on it then, you could, or we could just wait till the last meeting.
Because that's on the table already.
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Brown?
Mr. Surpass, I had also responded back to Ms. Toots about the special meeting, but prior to any special meeting, I would request that any expenditures that we would be voting on, that there's details to back it all up.
Right, and that's why I want to give you those ordinances that you're gonna you got right now. I'm gonna try to give you the ordinances right now, as we, the ones I'm gonna ask you to do. Now, you do have on the table is 3 ordinances to accept this budget. We have to make changes to that, of course, depending on the amendments that we make. For the fund balances and things like that. But there's 3 ordinances on the table already, and so those things. Of course, you're going to see it because we're going to actually do it at this table for those. But once for 2017, there's only one of them that's on the table, I believe, and that's the one for the $6 million legal fees. You can vote on it at the special meeting, or we can wait till the December meeting. Just so we do it, just so you know that if we don't do those ordinances, we are definitely going to have a budget issue. Because as it looks, we're not going to get the $10 million. So is everybody clear? I mean, I know it's complicated, with the BP, but is everybody clear where we stand with that? Okay.
Go to manpower?
No, not yet.
Where do you want to go to?
Not yet. No, let's go, I have one more fund balance I want to talk to you about before.
Follow your agenda, that's a...
I know, we're running behind, but I mean,
You just do what you got.
yeah, this stuff is important. I mean, I want y'all to know where we stand. The next thing is the bond indebtedness. I want to show you where we stand with that. If you go to the tab that says fund balance designations, it's a pink tab. And I'll bring it up on the screen also. Bond indebtedness, as we all know, it's everything over $19 per barrel, 225, that is projected by Rogers and Nelson, goes into the bond indebtedness fund. So we started out in 2017, our current budget is $9,172,000. We are proposing over $19 a barrel, 225, to put into the bond indebtedness $4,477,200. Interest that's going to be earned on the money for bond indebtedness is projected to be 75.5 million, not million, 75.5 thousand. The transfer that we're requesting back to the unreserved and designated to balance the budget is $4,963,782, which leaves 1 year bond payment of $8,761,000, which is what we did last year. So we're asking to transfer $4,900,000 back to the unreserved and designated to balance the budget. Now, keep in mind, the way it used to work when all prices were real high, I can go back up and show you. We used to transfer a lot more money than that. We used to be able to transfer enough to cover the whole bond payment for that year. Well, as you see, there's only $4 million is projected to go in here. We don't have enough to make that whole bond payment. So we're asking to take out pretty much everything that we're putting in and to leave 1 year's bond payment. Everybody clear on that? So those two things, between the BP settlement and the bond indebtedness, is the only thing we're asking to take funds out and transfer back to unreserved and designated to help balance.
Comments from the table?
I just have a quick question, Tommy, and I don't know if y'all know this off the top of y'all head, and you very well may. In order to keep operating as is this year, 2017, keep all services, the manpower that we currently have, all of the services that we've, been funding and things of that nature, what are we looking at for 18? Do y'all have that number if we just keep everything as is for 17?
I don't have exactly that number, but I can tell you, when we started doing the budget, and now this went by department requests, and some of the requests, of course, are passed.
Well, I'm just talking about just leaving everything as is for what we funded for 17, just rolling out all of that into 18. How much are we looking at a deficit? I mean, I know it's going to be a deficit, but
I can tell you we was about $7 million short when we did the revenue. So it was about $7 million in the expenses that we were short.
and how much were we basing all prices on?
$51.50.
Okay, but our production has decreased, so that the price isn't going to make a significant difference if you don't have the production.
Scott's gonna cover that.
Okay, I just want a ballpark. Thank you.
So if we turn back to the fund balance summary by year fund balance, the white page, the first report. I just want to summarize what what's in this budget and what the proposed fund balances are as of right now for 2015. The bond indebtedness, as we just covered, was $8,761,000. Now, this is where the issue is going to come in with the BP funding. It says $13 million here, and the reason it says $13 million, that doesn't take out $10 million or the $6 million in the legal fees. We started out with $10 million in 2017. If y'all pass the ordinances to take out the $10 million and the $6 million in legal fees, then this will bring that down to the $6 million that we covered earlier. If you go back to the report for BP. And your unreserved undesignated fund balance is projected to be $444,000. If everything was left exactly like it is. So that's pretty much all I had on the fund balances, so telling you where we started. I have some other issues that I want to bring up for 2017 that's going to affect the 2018 budget, but I like what Scott's here. I like to go through the oil and gas revenues first, and he can give you a presentation. I think he got some of this here.
Is all right? Check.
Yeah, that's good. Also, in conjunction with that, if you turn to page supplemental information, it's orange tab in the book. I'm sorry, Tommy, what did you say? Supplemental information, it's orange tab, and it's the gray page. Just gives you the oil and gas summary. You can see 2018 proposed budget.
Orange tab, the first one, so.
Orange tab, supplemental information. I'm bringing this stuff up on the screen too, for me and the other. You can see the column that's in blue. 51.50 price per barrel that we're proposing. $3.40 gas per MCF. Total. All the gas revenues, $13,246,970. Now I'll turn it over to Scott.
All right. I've prepared a plot that you all have. It's 2 pages. The first page is the oil production, the net oil production to the parish. The second page is the net gas. I guess I'll just frame this out a little bit. The plot on the left side shows the scale for the net oil, and the right side is the oil price. The oil price is that heavy black line that you see. It's going from 2011 to current, and then into 2018 projections. All the different colors you see, obviously you see a heavy, mostly blue. That's our top operator here in the parish is Hillcore. They're over 90% of the oil revenue to the parish. And then this just gives a good trend of what we're looking at. If you start in 2012 and kind of look at that plot, and the other thing is the other colors are other operators, so they show you the percentage for each operator that the parish has production with. So that top line is the total oil production to the parish. So it ranges from, in 2013, of 20,000 barrels a month to where we are today at about 13,000 barrels a month. If you look kind of on a trend basis, around the October 2015 peak area, you see from there, looking toward the right, you see a decline, and that's what we're looking at now. So it's a pretty substantial decline, and that's the problem. So the last couple of months we've been having pretty good oil prices. I think actually Louisiana Sweet this past week is about 65, and West Texas Intermediate is about $59 a barrel. But let's see. So if you look toward the right side in 2018 projections, we have the black line is the PPG budget that's based on the oil price of $51.50. And as of last week, the EIA, which is the United States Energy Information Agency, their projection is right there as well at right at $51 to $51.90 toward the last quarter of 2018. So projection-wise, that's what this budget is based on at $51.50 oil, and at current rates. So at the current rate, if you looked at the tip of that little white, the little green tip at the end of the colored plot, and projected that straight across, that price and that rate would give you the oil price, the oil budget for the parish, which would be $7.2 million. Obviously Hillcore's activity has been reduced. I've kind of noticed over the last 6 to 8 months, and that's probably what you would expect when the price has been down. I'm hoping that probably will level off, and there will probably be more activity going on with the oil price kind of ticking up.
On the second page, it's basically the same thing. You've got the gas, which is very minimal. When you look at dollars of oil and dollars of gas, the gas budget for the year is $372,000 based on gas price at $3.40. The EIA projection is there in red, and they dip it down a little bit from where the PPG budget is based on at $340, and then they kick it back up in the last quarter of 2018. So with those two plots, that gives you a total oil and gas budget of $7.6 million for 2018 at $51.50 oil and $3.40 gas. Any questions or?
Mr. Lapine, then Mr. Rousseau.
Guys, what is the state basing their barrel of oil on?
They're right at 51 right now too. The last time I talked to them was after the last meeting we had, and they were, I think, around 46, and they kicked theirs up, I think, around a little over $50 a barrel. I'm not positive I don't have that exact number though. I think it's.
And Tommy, a question just right here. On the 2017 proposed budget, when we had $47.50 a barrel, we were estimating that we would get $16 million of income, correct? Okay. Well, the revised budget shows $12 million, hence the reduction of it. What is the probability of the 2018 budget reaching that higher price of oil and still not reaching our threshold of $13 million? It's all about production, correct? I don't know.
It's what your production rate is going to hold or continue.
Okay, but at $51.50 a barrel, we think the production rate will generate $7 million. That's correct?
Yes.
Okay, but do we look? Because you could see the deficit that we had in 2017. Do we anticipate to come back and amend it again, or go back? Because, I'm having this, we're raising the price of oil, but we still predicting that's going to be less money coming in. And it's all about production, am I correct?
Correct.
Okay, but if the price of oil goes up, could production increase?
It usually does. I mean, when the price goes up, the companies get out there and start spending more money. There's going to be a lag time. There's going to be months of lag time, but you'll like we haven't seen this $65 oil in our revenues yet. That's coming. That's coming in the next couple of months. You'll see that on the statements, and you'll have
that's anticipated.
Right.
But you have to explain why. I mean, you can't just, there's a reason why we're getting 65 from Louisiana Light. There's a reason why Brent crude is up to 56. Because we had a glutton. Since OPEC stopped producing, we released them. I think Bloomberg said a couple days ago that they estimated half of the glut was now released. So the question is going to be, what is OPEC going to do? Are they going to start producing more and backfill that, or are we going to start producing here? So there's a lot of variables to it.
Many variables, worldwide and local, and
Well, the major variable is gold. So it's about what we produce, and it is about production. I would be very cautious to take a look at these numbers and say, hey, look, it says 65. Let's base a budget on 56 or 57, whatever it is. My recommendation would be to go anywhere over 51, 52. I'm kind of comfortable with 51 because we're not sure what's going to happen after the glut gets fully released, or if it does get fully released, or what OPEC decides to do, and the play we made with Russia. And there's a lot of variables with it, as you know, and I think Amos knows as well. So I just want people to be cautious and kind of understand the background of it, and it's not just based on, hey, gas is $65 a barrel right now, and that's what we should base a budget on. Because it could be 70, and the production could be halted because OPEC's coming in bringing more fuel. So, you agree?
I agree.
Okay.
Yes, from your graph, do you see the rate of production on other producers in the parish falling as well?
I think that would be That would be generally, obviously not to the size of Hillcore, but the smaller ones, generally the smaller ones are a lot less wells producing, so, I mean, it could, certainly the operators are going to spend more money to get more production at a higher price. So yeah, I would think the answer to that would be yes. I think the smaller ones would try to, they wouldn't have as many opportunities because they have a smaller amount of wells to work with, so.
But I mean, from the chart, what this chart shows, the production across the board is down?
Oh yeah, but if you mean the general trend of production? Yeah.
From all operators, not just one. Even though we have a 90% or 80%, whatever the number is, from the biggest producer.
Hillcore, yeah.
But the trend for all producers is downward because
of Hillcore's reduced activity. That just brings everything down. So the top line on there, that production is just an accumulation of the total.
No, I'm talking about like the end of Saratoga and Swift and those operators. Are those operators also producing less now?
Yeah, they're generally declining as well, yes. Well, no, I guess what you're saying is, yeah, the bandwidth for, let's say, Saratoga, that orange, is basically kind of staying the same. So they're kind of holding, like looking at TPIC, the gray one, that band is kind of the same. So that means their production is, if you look back years, you'll see the thickness of that gray band for TPIC is holding, so they're holding their production.
And I'm focusing on October, January 17 to date.
Right.
The whole graph seems to be falling.
Right. So let's just look at them. So Saratoga's band from the orange from January 17 looks like they're holding their production because that band is the same thickness all the way to the end of the plot. TPIC thickness there is the same, so their general production is holding. It looks like the Green Mesa is kind of up and down, they're kind of on and off. And then, of course, Hillcore is reducing the total, which is their major problem of the rate in total. There's only basically 6 operators now that are producing oil and that are receiving income now. Oil income.
At the comment, Mr. Brady mentioned this earlier too as well. Do these companies have other aspirations other than this Regis state? They're moving outside with production?
Do they have other...
moving into other areas to have production of oil.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Would that have an impact on whether or not their production is down?
I would think so. And in fact, you know, it's almost sometimes a good thing if say, someone were to come in and purchase or replace Hillcore and another company were to come in, because they would be more ready and active to spend money and get the rate up.
Yeah. So what is the primary cause of that, you think, for them moving?
Just you know, you have the shale oil, you know, you have other operators that have properties in other areas, like they might have holdings in the shale oil area or the shale oil and gas plays that they might want to focus their energy on and dollars to get that production up, or not be their core, wherever they decide might be their core activity for the next year in budgeting. Yeah.
Anyone else? Comments?
Yes, sir. Just a quick question, Mr. Scott and Mr. Elson. Is there anything that you see that we can do as a government to encourage, or just production is based on the need and what's there in each region?
Maybe what would come to mind is make things maybe a little more easy to
business friendly.
The company came and said we want to drill some wells, kind of say, hey, what do you need? That kind of thing.
Okay. I just, thank you.
I don't think we denied anybody.
That's right.
That's right.
Just so.
Mr. Rousseau?
Yes, following that line of discussion, I believe that we should have the legal and mineral department look at the current leases that we have outstanding and if they're not producing and there's a way to release those properties, perhaps put them in commerce, we ought to look at that and evaluate where we're at, because if they quit producing on property and lose the lease, we can advertise them or possibly find some other nominees that would be interested to get them back into production. So that's something I think the mineral department ought to look at. I know in years past we've had an issue with one lease covering most of the parish property, but I believe the legal department and the mineral department would be more apt to look at that.
Thank you, Councilman Russo. I will instruct them to do so.
Simon?
Okay, any more questions on oil and gas? Okay, that being said, we can move on. There's one other thing that I'd like to talk to you about. It's a 2017 issue. Before we move on to 2018 revenue. It's the 3 disasters that we had in 2017. With Tropical Storm Cindy, with Hurricane Harvey, and Tropical Storm Nate. As you know, we had expenses for each one of these disasters. In 2017, we didn't put any money in the budget for any of these things. I think it's something that we need to look at and try to cover. I'm going to give you some ordinances right now for 2017 that you can look at. This will be something you can look at later, or we can go through.
So Tommy, this is to cover all the emergency contracts, overtime?
Right. And this is where we're staying right now. You know, I mean, what has come in so far. She's going to give you a report that shows you the our expenses as of to date for each one of these. The report on top is expense performance report as of November 22nd. This shows you how much the expenses we had on each one of these disasters. Hurricane Harvey, $444,000. Hurricane Cindy, $98,000. And Nate, $20,000. Now, this does not take into consideration the cost of personal services, the overtime, the straight time that we use on these things. We covered that already when we did an ordinance, that when we took the money out of vacancies and we put it in overtime and stuff like that, we covered those issues. So this is just the operating part of these things.
This is outside services,
Outside services, yeah.
right? Because the ordinance that we passed took care of the internal manpower.
Correct, the manpower part, correct. And behind this, I have 3 ordinances, 2017 ordinances, that puts the funding in for Harvey, for Cindy, and for Nate. Now, keep in mind, Harvey and Nate are something that we anticipate is going to be covered by FEMA, 75-25. So the total amount, you see, this is blanks because I didn't want to put actual numbers in here because the meeting's not till the 14th, I think, of December. These numbers can change somewhat, so I didn't want to put actual numbers in. But the Harvey stuff is going to be covered at least 75% by FEMA. Nate's the same way. Cindy is not. That $100,000, $98,000 would have to be covered by us. So this is just something that we need to think about because this is going to cause us a budget issue at the end of the year also.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
Is there any way we can get a breakdown of exactly what these expenses were incurred? The $444,000, what was, what generated that number?
I can get your transaction register. I'll get that for you today. I can run that when you go back to the office. I have it to you tomorrow or later today.
Okay.
Councilman Burt?
That was my exact question was, could we get a breakdown for each one of these line items?
Yes, absolutely.
And any contracts that go with it?
Now, I'm not going to have contracts, but I will have the the transaction register, and it shows the companies, the vendors that were paid.
But it doesn't show the detailed description of the work. You would just have a vendor and the amount that was
Right.
paid.
That's right. It would tell you the vendor and the amount that was paid.
Where can we get a detailed report of what work was actually done?
Well, I'd have to get you copies of the checks. Or unless Mr. Colby has something, but copies of the checks would have the details behind them.
And we've got some invoices.
I just think that would be something that we should have before we vote on. I mean, I know it's money that has been incurred already, it's expenditures, but I would like a detailed report as to what work was actually done.
Let me tell you, well, these are just going to be things that have to be introduced.
Right.
So I'm just going to ask that he introduces this, and I'll make sure that you have the transactions and all the checks that go with them. But, this week,
And I'd like for the administration to have all the backup work as opposed to.
We'll get you
what
the
work was done.
invoices.
I'll send you the
Thank
checks
you.
and everything is up to back up for all the checks.
Thank you.
Councilman Burke,
Just one last question. So,
Councilman Lapine, after.
so we look at Hurricane Harvey, $444,929, that money was already paid out?
That was paid out support, correct?
Okay, so where did the funds come from to pay that?
Well, the funds came from emergency funding. There was no funding put in the budget for that. That's what I'm asking you to cover. And that's the way it usually works when there's a disaster. The money's spent, and then we'll come back to the council and ask them to ratify that within the budget what's been spent. So now, keep in mind now, you're not going to have to cover $444,000. You're going to have to cover at most 75% of that. 25% of that. Because this is a FEMA, this is going to be covered by FEMA, so we're going to put a revenue in also. So we're not going to ask you to come up with $444,000.
Councilman Lapine.
Now, you made the statement that Hurricane Harvey and Nate would be covered, but Cindy wouldn't be covered?
No, Cindy,
When we had a state of emergency, all three of them?
there was a state of emergency, but it's not a FEMA. FEMA's not going to cover that because there wasn't enough money in the region spent on Cindy.
It'd be a percentage of
Right.
damage or whatever.
That's exactly right.
Okay,
throughout the region.
all right.
And Harvey was large and deep also.
Okay, but the other two will, I guess you made the statement too, will be probably 75-25?
Right, that's what we're going to ask you to do, put 75%. Now, and we already covered the personal service costs of this, so when we ask FEMA to give us 75% back, it's going to have the personal service costs. This is just the cost of what we pay like professional services and things like that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments from the table? Okay, Mr. Fairbanks?
Okay. That's pretty much what I wanted to cover. There's a couple other items for 17, but when we hit the revenues, I can go back and we can talk about those things then. Let's see. Next thing we can go to is the revenues. You turn to the green tab, revenues, second to last tab, and the white pages.
White pages?
Yes, sir. What I'll do is I'll touch on the larger items. If there's something you see that you have a question on, and you want to stop, please stop me and we'll go. I'm not going to go through every little small line item. Ad valorem tax. These numbers, $3,456,000 was based on the estimated tax roll, which is the preliminary tax roll. Since then, I received the actual tax roll, and that's one good thing. It went up some. I think the increase is around $300,000. I do have an ordinance for that. An amendment, I'm sorry. No, but I'll get to that and tell you exactly how much that is. But there is a slight increase for the ad valorem taxes.
That's a $300,000 increase in ad valorem tax.
Sales tax, there was a slight increase over 2017, $234,000. audits actually went down, 131,000. There's just not any large audits going on right now. Sales taxes. Subdivision fees, if you can look at 418,010. I don't know if it's easier for y'all to follow on the screen. I could do it that way, and I can kind of point it out to you. It's just up to y'all. If you look at the $40,000, I'm looking at the column that says 2017 to 2018 increase decrease. So when I call out a number, that's the number I'm going to call out. That is the impact fees for our subdivision. I think it's Hero subdivision. This number was given to me by the Purpose Department. Increase of 40,000. This number you're actually going to see in the fund balances. Impact fees all go to the fund balance designated for subdivisions. So that $40,000 is going there. The next large item is 427,717. Other GOMESA revenue sharing, $2,000,001. Explain that one.
Yeah, where you getting that?
That was given to us from the consultants. And this is the actual number they came up with. So we should be getting this amount in April or May of next year. And what we did, this is not part of the operating budget. We took this $2,000,001 and we actually put it in a project. So there's an increase when we get to the capital project, you're going to see that. This exact amount of $2,000,001 was put in a project.
Which project?
It was a project for, what was the name of that?
Flood control or something.
Flood control and,
I have a question.
Bert?
You go make the funding, don't these projects have to be approved by the Treasury first before we can allocate funding?
Councilman Berg, that would be the Restore Act monies. But I think you're correct, GOMESA goes in two, but we get our share of GOMESA that goes to us. But there's some, although Restore Act might just be BP money. But it's two separate things.
My question would be, who determined which project it goes to?
it was just a proposal. And the administration made a proposal to put it in flood control project. It only can be spent on, I think, coastal flood control things.
Right.
So that's why we put in that project.
But as you said, it's just a proposal.
It's just a proposal, correct. And you'll see that when we get to the capital projects. There's very few things that we added in projects, and that was one of them.
Mr. Chairman?
Rousseau?
Ms. Williams?
Okay.
How was this funding determined? Was this some kind of grant that we received, or?
This was, we received paperwork from, I forgot the name of the consulting firm.
This is according to the federal legislation, the Gulf of Mexico Energy Security Act of 2006, I think.
Okay, so this is a one-time funding, correct?
No, this is ongoing, continuing funding.
Same amount of money each year?
No, it's contingent upon production in the, off of the federal lease lands.
Legal?
Yes.
Request to speak on it.
Okay, yes, the GOMESA money, that's, it's our share of the offshore royalties, is that correct, Mr. President? Yes, so this is what's going on past 3 miles out.
I'm just wondering, because it's a huge increase from 2017, so.
I think there's more activity offshore than on. But, and while I have the mic, y'all had asked earlier about what happens to interest with the BP money while it's in escrow. I asked Peter about that, and he responded back, and he said that it was, there is some interest, I don't know the rate, but we get it.
Councilman Rousseau?
Going back to the GOMESA program, that's a new program The reason you don't see any revenues really is because it's just now going to effect, and the Congress hasn't decided exactly what we're going to get yet. And the state has decided to lobby them, as we should be, to make us whole. But they have indications that the original numbers might be reduced by half. So as long as we don't incur any expenses on this line item, which I'm hoping the administration will not do, including putting consultants on underneath this revenue stream, I don't have a problem with putting it in the budget under that understanding that you're not going to encumber the funding with consultants until we decide on the project, as was stated by some of the other members.
Next, Mr. Black.
Yeah, I know you're working your way down, Tom. Just go ahead and if you could explain to us the increase in line 434, 105.
That is the 10% royalties, but we just went through with Scott.
Right.
It's all part of the whole number, that 13 million. We just estimate that's going to be an additional 256 for next year.
Yes, I would like you to give Tommy an explanation of 427, 723 adult court. That's a major increase.
The 103? No, let's see, I'm sorry. Oh, we went back up. Okay, I'm sorry. I was going down.
427.
723.
That's actually not an increase, it's just the same amount we anticipate to receive next year. I actually received this from the adult drug court, the lady that takes care of the program, and she gives me these numbers.
And along those lines, actual was 31,000. This is funding from the Supreme Court.
Right now, this goes in conjunction with, there's another one down here that's a state, let's see, I'll find it. If you look at 434,555, we received 79,000, only budgeted 63. So these two go in conjunction together. So yeah, we actually received more than what the budget was so far on this one.
But less on the other.
Now less on the other one, right?
So you still haven't received what you budgeted between the two lines.
Right, well, no, not yet. But like I said, we still have, and this one actually goes into the next year. We receive funding into like January or February, and that actually goes to this revenue. So we still have probably 2 or 3 months left to receive money for this one.
And back to the increase of the 256,000.
Right.
Knowing that we had a $5 million shortfall this year, y'all feel comfortable by increasing it by 256,000?
Well, yeah, I mean, with the increase in the price, this is what Scott, he feels comfortable. I mean, it's not that much of an increase, but looking at the history of the checks, we feel comfortable that we should be able to cover that.
Even with the $5 million shortfall this year?
Well, yeah, with $5 million shortfall, we had $16 million, and now we're anticipating $13 million. So it's a good bit less than what we anticipated the original budget from last year. So
I guess my goal is to see what rollover from 16 to 17, 17 to 18, and squeeze it out of this budget so we don't have to recognize revenue that don't exist.
right.
That's pretty much my
I
approach.
feel more comfortable with this number than I did with the. But I mean, the thing about it is the price. I mean, the production dropped so much in 2017. I mean, it just went down so much that we just not receiving the checks that we did. But this is based on the checks that we're receiving right now. So, I mean, could it change? Of course. I mean, we could get $6 million next year. Anticipating 13. I mean, it's just an estimate, but it's an estimate based on where we are right now. If the production goes down more and the price drops out again, then yeah, But this is Scott's best guess at this point.
Any other comments from the table? Are we going down the lines?
Yeah. I mean, I can call them out if y'all want to.
On the hotel motel tax, the $250,000, I mean, we have some obligation on the expenditure of those funds to be within that category of tourism, promotion, and so forth.
Right.
Do you know where we're currently spending those funds, or are they just going into the general fund?
These funds just go in the general fund and they cover the economic development when we had that department.
So what, I was,
I assume we're still just doing some of that stuff, but that department's not there anymore.
so I was looking at the hotel motel tax for tourism and economic development. Ms. Williams was looking for some funding to try to put a temporary, part-time person in the Fort Jackson Museum. So I know the bottom line is all the same, but, I mean,
If you want to do that, it would just be an amendment. You have to come out of unreserved, whatever our.
right, but I mean, we should have an accounting that is $250,000 to show that we're complying with the law on remittance back to the parish, that we are actually funding what the law says we should be funding under the hotel motel tax remittance. Just a point for Ms. Williams to consider.
We used to have that when economic development was there, but there's no department there now. So.
Right, but I mean, just to clarify that, the reason that we had that there, we was paying all salaries. So, anyway. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Next item, anybody? You want to move to?
Yeah, I would like to, if we're not going down the line, I want to move to 491, 684. That's an increase of 200,000.
Yeah. Let me.
491.
I'm gonna pass out a report. I'll show you how we came up with this.
684, you said?
Yeah, it's the top of page.
Yeah, okay, I got it.
Right, yeah, the very first one.
Had a question about that also?
This is not bad. Just the first page, just disregard that first page. But that's 2014. I had a bunch of different years and I put the wrong year on there, but I'll bring it up on the screen to show you 2018. But if you look at the peach page, this is what we had proposed. The top is what we had proposed to the port to pay, that the administration did, to pay for services that we provide to the port. 911 services, civil service, council secretary, emergency preparedness, parish courier, and telecommunications. It came up to about $410,000 based on the 2017 budget. We received back from the port, I received the email back, that came up with $206,000.
Right, and that's what so last year in 2017, this council adopted the budget with revenues from the port at $200,000. And it was based on this formula, not some arbitrary formula that's been used at the top.
Well, the number that I used when we did the budget was just a number that I just put there, so we get the negotiations started. And it was $200,000, correct?
Right, which is only $6,000 off of what was actually used. So I think that assessment was pretty spot on from the amount that we budgeted for revenue last year for the port, based on that particular formula. When you talk about, and we can discuss this tomorrow morning at the port budget hearing, and they'll tell you in regards to 911 services, telecommunications, firefighting, ambulance services, it's quite different from what the administration is proposing now. Because they'll also give you, which they want to propose it, and we'll look at it, doesn't mean we'll pass it, but they have an amendment to their proposal, which then comes back and charges the parish for multiple services they perform on behalf of the parish. Now, whether we're in agreement with that or not, that's something that can be discussed tomorrow. But I'm just saying that we're adding in a total of $1.1 million is what you guys have proposed for the port to pay to PPG, as opposed to $200,000.
If you look at the screen, I mean, I don't know if you have the screen in front of you, whatever, but this is what we're asking in 2018. $416,000 for the general fund side, $674,000 for the firefighting side. firefighting fund.
Which, and that's a discussion that we could probably have tomorrow at the port meeting, when the port staff is here.
Right.
But to say that the port owes the firefighting ambulance services, nearly $700,000 is, you can explain to us where that number comes from, or whoever proposed this can explain to us where that number comes from. Because for firefighting services on the water, the port uses their own vessels. And I don't want to get into operational issues with that. I'll let the executive director explain all of that stuff, but that's a $700,000 increase, which to me is just insane. As far as the 911 services go, the port gave a good proposal with the actual breakdown, and they give descriptions as opposed to what the parish provided, which gives no descriptions. So for us to sit up here and just use arbitrary numbers that are thrown into a budget proposal that don't have any backing, it's the same thing that happened with the $400-some-odd thousand that was used for Hurricane Harvey. It's numbers. There's no itemization at all on it. There's no accountability at all. So, well, I'll reserve the rest of my comments till tomorrow, but I just want to make the council know that in this proposed budget, the administration set $1.1 million when the port is only proposing $200,000. So that's a huge difference of $900,000.
President?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Councilman Williams and Councilman Edgecombe, all the members of the council, when we get into fire, now I've heard many of you are very concerned about our fire department. Again, it goes back to we're one government. Now, fire, EMS is another department, district within this government, and we have to work together. The days of special treatment that began just in 2013 have to come to an end. We have to work together. And I'll read to you, again, this is all in the charter, section 7.04, the parish council by ordinance, and this is another way we can do this. We could do it by an interfund service charge, because again, parish government paid for this building, ports receiving the benefit, they didn't. I can go on and on and on with many examples of this, but it's a question of policy. Are we going to take care of our fire department? Are we going to take care of EMS? Or are we just going to have a special group that gets privileged treatment? Now, the section is 7.04. Another way you could do this is the parish council, this is 7.04G, the parish council by ordinance may transfer any unencumbered appropriation balance, any portion of the earnings of balances of any district for which the parish council is the governing authority. Now, parish council, you're the governing authority for every district, including the port district. So if you want to do it by an appropriation, you can do it that way. That's another reason why this segregation, this state of segregation it's contrary to the charter, contrary to law. So that would be another way to do it. One way to do it was this fees, but everybody has to pay their fair share, or else the fire department's going to suffer, EMS is going to suffer, services is going to suffer. And I would say that this $400,000 is on the low side.
It's not, first of all, it's not 400, it's 1.1 million. Second of all, if you look at the breakdown, you mentioned the port's use of the council. First, the port did a proposal which included the council in the council secretary's office and added almost $200,000, $182,000 towards the council. So they are paying that share. As far as 911 services goes, firefighting and ambulance services go, I've asked the Deputy Director, Paul Matthews, to provide us with a spreadsheet of expenditures that the port is currently providing. On top of that, what this council did, to reference back to the charter that you just referenced, the port pays rental fees for the government property that they utilize. We didn't have to do that. This council decided that's part of that section of the charter that we are going to go ahead and enact. So, that is not in this budget either. It's in the budget as revenues, as income, which I think is $5,000 a month. So close to $70,000. I think the air conditioning unit to be replaced in the entire Povich building was done by the port. There are a lot of items. So I've asked Paul Matthews to give us a detailed breakdown of the expenses that the port provides to PPG. Mr. Berry, I have nothing else.
I just have a brief comment. When we talk about districts contributing, are we talking about taxing bodies or just districts?
I'm sorry,
When we talking about interagency fees back to the government, are we talking districts or are we talking taxing bodies?
interagency fees would be districts, Councilman Burt. And just to set the record straight, to go to Councilman Black's statement, since 2013, this special district has received a free ride. Since 2013, since this artificial breakup, segregation, they have not paid $1. Am I correct?
Not interagency.
Not one interagency fee. They've been getting a free ride since Councilman Anthony Burris's ordinance to try to segregate this special district.
This council corrected that. We recognize that.
To this day, Councilman Blunt.
And finish, please. Mr.
To
President.
this day, Mr. Sir, has the parish government received any money since 2013 in interagency
Not
fees?
interagency fees. We have
No money in interagency fees.
Okay, but this council, this sole governing authority of the port, budgeted for revenue $200,000 in 2017's budget. I have an ordinance on the table to go ahead and transfer that money to PPG for 2017. So that's been, that is the first time that this council has done this. So I'm glad you pointed it out, that it may not have been done in the past, but this council did it. This council, and it used it based on a formula, not some arbitrary number based on a vendetta or a misinterpretation of the charter or state law. So, I'm arrested at that. We're going to talk about this tomorrow in more length, but for you to say that the port and that this governing body of the port hasn't contributed to PPG, that's totally false. And Mr. Surfaz can attest to the many conversations that him and Rochelle has had over the past month in regards to those payments, those ordinances to authorize those payments, and the funding that we received from PPG. Am I wrong, Tommy? Or did you guys have very lengthy conversations with the port about the revenues coming in?
And that's where this came from.
Right.
That's why I put the proposal from the board and I put our.
So I want to congratulate this council for breaking the mold and actually paying PPG what's been done. That's all.
Mr. President and Mr. Roussel.
Yes, and I want to reiterate, that's why we're bringing this to this council, that it's a choice. We've got, the fire department provides services to our constituents. EMS provides services to our constituents. The port does not provide services to our constituents per se. So far, we've been hearing, hopefully it's been 5 years, it's been a lot of money invested, we might get a refinery. We can all be hopeful. There was talk a little while ago about estimations on what's coming in, what's not. Well, it hasn't. But what we do know is that if we're going to say that we care about fire service, if we're going to say we care about EMS, then it's time for every district to pay its fair share. And that's where the policy decision, that's your policy decision, that's why I'm highlighting this. It's time for everybody to start paying their fair share.
So Roussel?
Yes, the mold wasn't broken, the mold was broken when we separated the port. This is a reflection back on what we used to do when we were merged and consolidated into one body. We had intergovernmental service transfers well in excess of this amount. So, it's going back to what the port used to pay towards the operations of these services. And I'm not sure what the number was, but I believe the port used to do intergovernmental service charge maybe as much as $1.5 million or $900,000 or whatever it was. Do you remember?
I don't think it was that much. It was at least $500,000.
At least $500,000. So we used to do this as an intergovernmental service charge. And these percentages, I guess, are what you used, like 7.5% for firefighting and 7.5% of ambulance service.
Right,
That's of the total cost.
of the total budgeted cost.
So the government is still picking up 92.5% of those expenditures, and the port's paying 7.5% of those expenditures. Is that what that reflects?
That's right.
Councilman Black?
Yeah, and we can get to those breakdowns tomorrow, but another thing I wanted to point out, in regards to the sheriff, I would ask Reverend Giles, hasn't the port helped you guys out quite a bit in regards to ferries? Because otherwise, my assumption would be that ferries may be shut down if the port did not step in to do the monitoring that is required by the Coast Guard. Is that not true?
I have no knowledge of that.
So there's been no discussion between you and the director of the port or the executive, the deputy director, for them to provide their personnel to monitor the ramps, which is a requirement by the Coast Guard in order to operate the ferries.
I had a brief conversation with him maybe about 5
No, no audio.
Excuse me, Mr. Director, get to the mic, they can't hear you. We want this to be on tape.
If I may, Mr. Chairman,
You let me finish, or you, whatever. But
Yes.
somebody needs to speak through the mic.
I'll repeat what the director said, he has no knowledge of that, but I thank you. I really and truly thank you, Councilman Black, for raising this issue, because if we look at both the parish legislation and all the state legislation, the district's name is the Port Harbor and Terminal District. Now, this goes back to the big picture approach. Again, we're one government. It's time to quit segregating things. One government, which means that PPG is subsidizing the Port Harbors and Terminal District. How? To the tune of well over $1 million, because we subsidize the harbors, which should fall under the Port Harbors and Terminal District, and we subsidize the ferries, which is part of the Terminal District. So I thank you, Councilman Black, for highlighting the fact that, once again, PPG is carrying the weight for providing the services to the people of this parish and doing the job that Harbors and Terminal District, which is part of that Port District, should be doing.
Councilman Black, you have comments? So the suggestion that because of the legislation that was passed back when we separated,
I'm suggesting
not to be paid equal share, everybody paying their share.
Yes, that's another proposed way that this council could handle this, is give a credit to PPG for doing the job of the Harbors and Terminal District, because we're not receiving the credit from the Port Harbors and Terminal District right now. There's different ways there's a lot of ways to skin a cat, but the bottom line is everybody's got to pay their fair share. We need fire, we need EMS, we need ferries. We're paying for the ferries out of the PPG money, and we all know that in the harbors, PPG's taking on that liability. So it's different ways. There's a lot of different ways to skin a cat. You can do it by interagency fund transfer. You can do it by a credit on the books. I'm just proposing different ideas.
Councilman Burke?
Mr. Surpass, what was the date you said the last check you received from the Port Harbor and Terminal District?
I'm going to have to go back and look, but I think it was in 2012, probably. It was before the port was segregated.
Okay.
We used to do an interfund transfer, just like we do. If you look at the line items underneath this, it says reimbursement interfund services. The port used to have one as well.
But you haven't received any since then?
No, I'm aware of.
Any other comments on the item before this table?
But you don't misrepresent or mislead. There have been negotiations and discussions between you and the port to receive a check. I have an ordinance on the table to receive one. Okay, I know, but it makes it sound like the port's not paying its obligation.
That's where this came from. I mean, I
Okay.
gave y'all this so you can see the proposal. They definitely did, yeah, because we've been going back and forth for 6 months on this, so. But no, I have not received any money yet.
Mr. Rousseau?
If we're done with the port, moving on to the alligator eggs, we're done with the port. I noticed that,
What number? What number line item?
Alligator.
469.1.016. We received in 2016 $115,000, and we're only estimating for 2018, actually on 2017, so far we've only collected 18. Is that because it's a seasonal issue, or is that because no one is picking up the eggs anymore for us? It's a difference of about $100,000, Guy, why are you laughing?
No, it's a good question.
Are we still under the same agreement? I guess that's the question, same contract person.
We didn't renew any contracts,
That's better with that.
Were any presented?
you know.
Did we advertise it?
No, this was a sui generis thing. That guy came in that one year, we passed the resolution to authorize the contract, we did it, and he didn't come back in.
Well, I would recommend that the land department look at trying to put a program in to raise these revenues back to previous historical revenues, if possible, by advertisement or arrangement of someone picking up the eggs. If we lose $100,000 on alligator eggs, somebody's out there picking them up. We probably need to have the land department put something in place for that.
I think the first time it was done with this council, when we introduced this back in 16, I think. All in the past, we didn't collect a nickel.
Right.
So when we did it in
We
16,
in 16.
Councilman Bowden brought that to the table, and I thought it was a great thing that.
so that's money that we've been losing all along. So I agree with Mr. Roussel that we need to put it out there and advertise it necessary for our contract with someone to do that.
There actually has been a contract. I'm trying to find the person's name and the company name who's been getting the eggs.
Yeah, we had it in 16, but we didn't have any contract this year, I believe.
Actually, I got the name from alligator buyer this year when I was questioning the eggs, who was picking them up for the fair.
So it was a contract offered this
I'm
year?
finding my phone, I'll come back.
All right.
So was the contract just a one-year contract?
If I recall correctly, I don't want to say that the specificity is not here,
they go
but I think it was a
at night.
one-year contract.
To get the eggs. Not me.
Any other
I
items
ain't going.
that want to be addressed, Mr. Roussel?
Moving down to miscellaneous settlements general, we have another estimated $1.6 million in there as a revenue source.
Correct.
Is that some concurrence proceedings that are still ongoing?
That's concurrence proceedings that I talked to Mr. Albee about. He said he was, sure that we would get that. We did collect our money in 2017. It doesn't reflect on here, but we did receive a check last week, so.
So he feels comfortable about that?
He feels comfortable that we'll receive another 1.6 million, correct. I talked to him about that last week.
And then those other items in there, I see where we have punitive damages in there again for $3 million that we've already talked about.
Correct. And the 5 million.
$5 million payment.
I recommend that we have an amendment to remove that $3 million.
Okay. All right. I think we have.
That's a question, are we keeping track of all of these items, because the 3 million, the 5 million, a bunch, I mean, that's a...
Well, y'all just tell me what y'all really want amendments for, and we'll draw them up.
I recommend that 3.
I recommend any one that's not in the bank. I mean, when it comes to settlements.
Councilman Biden, any
settlements.
Well, but that's, but none of this money's in a bank, we haven't received any.
That's why I specified in regards to settlements,
Well,
because...
This is 2018, what we're proposing that we're going to receive. I mean, the meeting 6 concurrences cases, those are ongoing cases, and Mr. Albee said we were going to receive that money. That's why it's put in the budget. The $3 million punitive damages, that's something that was given to Mr. Cormier from the attorneys. I mean, all of this is estimates. I mean, if we don't think we're going to get it, then we can take it out.
Well, what I'm saying is as far as like oil and gas revenues, ad valorem revenues, those are projections based on something real.
Right. Well,
Settlements up to a portion, are not something that, I think the 10 million is probably real money,
right.
but the $3 million punitive damages,
I think it's 5 million is also real money. I mean, that was actually.
Yeah, that was a settlement that was awarded.
yeah, right, that.
Just like the 10 million. The 1.6 million is actually funds that I think these cases are ongoing, and this, I mean, from what I understand, it's concurrences cases, and this stuff is really ongoing, and he knows this, we're gonna receive this money in 2016.
Right, and I'm really hoping that out of those settlements, the legal fees are deducted.
I'm not sure how that works.
Well, on the concurrence proceedings, there's no legal fees involved. Mr. L.V. Cooley's on the payroll, and he handles these cases, so for that, there's no legal fees. As far as the other money, the $5 million payment, that's what the $6.4 million is fighting over, because we've already settled that case.
Yeah, I get that, but later on today, we're going to discuss legal services general, and...
Well, that's another subject.
Right.
We'll get to that.
Well, like I said, if there's an amendment you want us to do, tell me now, and I'll write up the amendment, we'll get it written up for you. We could, it's up to the council how you want to handle this, if you want to do it as we write them up. I mean, it takes more time to do it that way.
I think we could do them at the end. I think we wrap up.
May I make a suggestion that we move forward with that after we hear from the legal people, professors we have on staff, advising us exactly where we are and what is our his perception of this money. Is this concrete money or just that?
In essence.
So I would appreciate if we could do it like that, to eliminate some time.
Whatever y'all wish, y'all just tell me.
Mr. President, okay, anybody else? Mr. Rousseau?
I'm good. I'm just going on with Mr. Surpass.
All right, next item, please. Anybody have any other items on this item? Part of the agenda?
Well, while we're in the revenues, I don't know if the administration had the time to look into the cable franchise fee. I know there's an increase there as well for revenue. We don't have an agreement in place from my understanding, and we need to renew the franchise agreement with the cable company unless it's been done prior to it expiring that I don't know about. Maybe you can enlighten me.
So who's going to answer that for Mr. Rousseau?
I have talked to legal about that, and they will be working on that.
What about the boroughs?
That's missed revenue.
I'm trying to find out what's going on with that. The boroughs? What are the actual fees for the borough pits? How many pits do we have? How many are supposed to pay $10,000 a year? That kind of stuff.
Budget's only 6.
That's what I'm talking about.
Major question is, are we still paying the monitoring group?
If you look at permits for ball pits you're talking about, we 418.015
Yes.
it received $54,000.
Yeah, I understand what we received, what you received.
Okay.
But my question is, do we have any people owe us any money besides that we didn't collect from? So that's the question I get legal need to address when they come in to identify the legal. Would you please make a note of that? So when we come to that point, we can address that. And also, Mr. President, if we, as Mr. Sullivan's suggested, as we suggested in the committee, that the people are supposed to be managing this thing and not doing what they need to do, we need to have something to just remove those people from the position and get it done. Any other items?
All right, we can go to the road maintenance fund in revenues.
Road maintenance fund.
Page 4. And as I said earlier, I am going to give you an amendment for the ad valorem taxes, and the general fund is going to be affected about $300,000. So that's actually going to increase your fund balance by $300,000.
Is that due to the tax roll that was produced?
Yeah, I got the official tax roll now, and when I did the budget, it was based on preliminary tax roll. So I got the actual tax roll with the actual numbers, and
so those are good numbers.
they're good numbers. Well, I mean, you know, they estimates too, but they're good numbers from the tax roll itself, correct?
Any comments from the table? Next item, please.
Next page, page number 5, public health fund.
Any question on the public health fund from the table? Next item, please.
Solid waste fund is next.
Anybody have comments, solid waste?
I have a question.
Mr. Bennett?
Did we get the solid waste disposal contract resolved? And if so, is it reflected in this budget?
Councilman Burke, we have there is a contract in place that was premised upon the functioning of the Bukeville Venice disposal facility, which now it is it's been represented to us, is now offline. So there are ongoing negotiations. Councilman Juneau sat in some. That might be another good thing that we should, I think we had it in for executive session. But that's something I agree with you. We want to do, let's just say, clarify that status.
So apparently there is no contract
There is a contract in place.
with Waste Pro Services?
Correct, because they purchased EI, yes. There are issues with that though because of what happened in Bukeville with,
The Venice facility being shut down.
correct.
Yeah, to just follow up, so that's my point is, I believe their contract is up in about 6 months, and this has been on the agenda, on the table since 2015, that we're leaving probably $250,000 to $300,000 on the table by not negotiating a more favorable landfill site. So I would hope that we could get that additional revenue included in this budget for 2018.
According to, naturally, as Councilman Juneau would tell you, according to Waste Pro, they're losing money. We're getting the best of them. So, but those negotiations are ongoing.
Mr. Russell?
Down on the bottom where we have reimbursements for scrap metals, I believe we used to have a contract for scrap metals, and if we do, and if it's still in effect, then we need to utilize it around this facility because we have some buildings around here that could easily be cleared out, scrapped, just as we've done in the past. If it's not in effect, then I think we need to re-advertise and put that back in place so we can have a contract to come out and clear up some of the scrap metal that seems to be hanging around and we can't get rid of. Do you know if we have that contract is in place?
I don't know off the top of my head, Councilman Russo. We could certainly inquire.
Right. And while we're talking about contracts in general, I think you're going to find a recommendation from the audit committee and the auditor that we start consolidating one depository for contracts with this parish. I know we have a contracts administrator, and it's been difficult to track contracts, whether they be in the president's office, the legal department, or in the contracts administrator office. I believe that you'll see a recommendation coming from us that we have a depository for all contracts. And that way we have one source to go to, and there'll be no question about contracts being in somebody's drawer at this department or in the drawer in this department and not being able to find them all. Just a point of observation here. Thank you.
Anyone else? Next item, please.
Page 7, library services.
Comments from the table on library services? Anyone?
Page 8, transportation.
Transportation, anybody have comments on transportation? Next item, please.
Criminal court fund, page 9.
Comments for our criminal court fund?
Yes, I see you have a revenue proposal of $275,000. I was under the impression that we weren't receiving that type of money from the revenue of the criminal court fund any longer. Do you feel comfortable with that number?
Well, looking at it now, I mean, it does seem kind of high. We do have a few months, like I said, left, because this actually goes into we'll go into 2018 with collections. We received 201 so far. This is hard to say. I mean, if you look at the 2016 actual, it was 223. We do have 3 more months of collections. I mean, it may be low. But it's just hard for me to say,
But at the end of the year, we are splitting the criminal court fund 50/50 as
we
in the past?
split it 50/50, but the expenses are a lot higher. If you want to look at that revenue, you have to go back to the general fund. And, you know which one it is?
In the court fund, 14,670.
So for 2017, we've only collected
482,005.
482, there's a residual revenue transfer from the criminal court fund. Right, we only budgeted $14,000 to be our share. Well, that was, substantially more than that in past years. But the existing expenses are going up. In that fund, there's not that much money to go around anymore, so.
So I guess my question is that since the government has been making cuts to the courts, like 10% or whatever over the year, past year, more of that cost is getting shifted to the burden of the criminal court fund.
There's several salaries and things like that we put into the criminal court fund.
And so at the end of the year, we wind up paying for it anyway, out of not getting our half.
We don't get we don't get that revenue.
You're still paying for it either way.
I would point out that our obligations from the Constitution to pay for the district attorney's office and the monies that we send over there, that provision predates the diversion program. Now that there's diversion programs, what's happened is district attorney's offices all over the state, they make a great deal of money with diversion. And so they're getting a whole lot of money from diversion and then putting all the costs into the funds that we have to share with them. So it's a little game. It's that's being played between the agents.
So back to my original question, it says actual 2017, we have actually received 205,000?
Oh, yeah, in fines, yes. I mean, that's how much goes to the criminal court fund, but that's not our money. I mean, that's money that's gonna have to be distributed out as far as revenues go back to the general fund. It stays within the criminal court fund. So basically, yeah, they receive those revenues, but we also have to take the expenses into consideration too. So we take what the revenues are, what the expenses are, what's left over, and that's what gets split, 50-50.
But as far as this sheet goes, it shows that we should be receiving 288,000 in revenue from us, from the criminal court fund?
That's not from us. Now, this is not for us. This is going into the criminal court fund. That's why it's kept separately. This is how much is going to be collected in the criminal court fund. If we go back and look at the expenses for the criminal court fund, they're also in the fund to get, a separate fund. The money, what we showed you was $14,000, what we expected to get from the criminal court fund as our revenues. This is money that's collected in the criminal court, which is controlled by the courts and by the district attorney.
So our 50% is 14,000?
So right. Basically, we're going to get out of this $288,000, it's like $14,000, correct? Because you got to look at the expenses also. The criminal court fund, as I said, they went up on the expenses. They're paying more salaries and things out of the criminal court fund now. So we're going to collect $288,000, not us, but the criminal court fund is going to collect $288,000. But the expenses are going to be, we can go look at them.
But the expense, all expenses would come out as 288,000.
So
The salaries and everything else.
Is there an
$288,000.
Is there an obligation for us to maintain this criminal court fund, or can just shift it over to the judicial system and let them maintain their own fund?
I don't know about that. I mean, we've always done it, but I don't know
285 for
how much.
285 for.
Could you, I didn't understand the answer to the question I asked.
Okay. We received the $288,000.
Yeah.
That's how much, not us, but the criminal court. Right. We're going to receive $288,000. The expenses
285
are $285,000. Now, there's always.
That including personnel?
That's including everything, correct?
Okay.
So that's only $3,000, but there was something carried over from last year. You see what I'm saying? So there's a fund balance carried over from last year. So we take that into consideration. So we have a beginning balance plus the revenues minus the expenses, and that gives you a number. And so, our number was 14, so it's probably about $28,000. So that difference is $28,000, our share is $14,000.
Okay.
But it actually shows that we didn't receive anything yet in the general fund for 2017.
No, not yet, we do that at the end of the year.
Okay.
So let me ask you a question.
Yes, sir.
So they can use that money to hire extra people and also give them all 3% raises?
They use that money, yeah, to, part of their salaries, some of them, I think half of them go to that, and some of them totally go to the criminal court fund.
All right.
Well, we can look at that when we get to the manpower table and show you exactly who's being charged to that fund.
Any other comments from the table? Next item, please.
Mr. Chair? Yeah,
Yes, Mr. Baseball?
I'm going back to the alligator eggs.
Yes.
Nathan Wall is the person, Wall's Gator Farm is the company that had permission and also obtained the eggs for PPG.
This year, 2017?
Yes, sir.
Well, check on it.
And actually, they had to get a permit from Wildlife Fisheries in order to do that.
They do, yeah.
So that, if we approve, it has to come through this council. I don't
No,
remember.
not the council, but some sort.
No,
But we'd have had to sign it.
Yeah.
A contract had to be.
So maybe that's some revenue that's due and owed to us?
It is quite possible.
there's a lot of money in eggs.
What was his name, Councilman Edgerton? Nathan.
Wall.
That's different from a 16 contract, O'Shea. That's a different person.
Yeah, I believe that is. It was a different
Okay,
person.
so it was,
Somebody authorized,
that's when, no,
I'll pick up eggs.
Delacroix did it, that was in 16, I believe, but, what's his name? Down in Southern Son-in-Law.
No, not.
It is possible that the gentleman just thought he was good to go once he got his wildlife and fishery permit and didn't realize he needed to come to the parish, so that is quite possible. So we'll check on it.
So the question is, what revenue did we receive? So you got a guy,
Vinny, so we're gonna have to see what he made and if we're gonna get it. Yeah,
Look for the contract.
he needs to,
You might not have a
we
permit
need,
and
yeah.
initiate the permit.
That's my point. Valid point. Valid point. Next item, please.
Okay, page 10, district court reporter, $11,000. That money we get back to it, that's the actual revenue that goes back to the general fund. EWI court administrator fund, $3,100. 911 services,
Any comments on 911 services?
page 12.
Next item, please.
All right, the next item is firefighting fund. This is something I want to bring up to y'all. I don't know if y'all want to have Mr. Roy involved right now, or y'all want to do it when we get to the expenses. I had him on the list for tomorrow, but I want to bring something up to you. If you look at the fees for the ambulance fees, as you're aware, that's line item 447.005. We increased those fees from $700,000 to $1,000,001 in about $400,000 in 2017. To date, we've only collected. The quote is $200,000, but our rate a current was $209 so far for 2017. So we're definitely going to have an issue for 2017 because we're not even collecting we collected $537,000 in 2016. I mean, we've only collected $209 so far this year.
So is that another 800,000 hole in this budget?
That's correct, and this is based on collections. So this is definitely an issue, and we also budgeted that amount in 2018. Now, we don't do the billing or collections on this. All we basically do is they collect it, they deposit it, and send it to us. And I talked to Mr. Roy about this, and he's concerned about it also. So I mean, it's something we need to talk to him about.
so we brought this up before and asked for you guys to go out, or Roy to go out and get the company who we talked about to do the collections. And we did an analysis based on how much it would cost for us to have a third party go out and do those collections, that the revenue was like over 18% of what we would get to charge, and it's never happened. So I mean, this is our fourth year, going on our fourth year on this council, and it gets frustrating because we come up with solutions year after year, and nothing gets done. So, of course we have a hole, because we're probably short-staffed over there, and we're probably, not doing it efficiently. We gave solutions, and here we go again. Fourth year in a row, we're sitting around saying, hey, this is what we should do. So, that's all I have. It's just, it's frustrating, to say the least.
Ms. Williams?
Yeah, that's what I was going to allude to as well. We did make recommendations, and that's pretty much all the council can do is make recommendations, and it's up to the department heads and the administration to make sure that things are carried out and followed through. So I'm assuming that this is a billing issue, a lack of billing, a lack of collections, and things of that nature. So I really suggest and highly recommend that we get a grasp on this, because this is a lot of revenue that we're missing out on.
Mr. President?
Yes. This council did vote to increase the fees, and as you know, Councilwoman Williams, in certain, all throughout the parish, we have, due to, we've been on slow economic times, and many of the people who benefit from ambulance services, these emergency medical services, or Medicare or Medicaid. And so I have discussed this with Councilman Roy. So when we shift or try this increased fee approach, we're just passing the buck on to our residents and our constituents.
You have to pay for services that are provided, whether you're on Medicaid, Medicare, you're employed, you bill Medicaid and Medicare back. I just feel that this is just something that people aren't being held accountable. Not the general public, I'm talking about people in the roles of billing and collections and things of that nature within the government. This is one of the main reasons that we decided to merge EMS and fire, was because there were billing issues and inadequacies. And here we are again, like Mr. Black said, several years down the road, having the same issues.
Well, I'd like to add to the situation that since we merged, we have created a devastation on the East Bank for fire protection by eliminating a firehouse. Also, the rating has never changed. We still have 10, and not even having a fire department. You can't get no water in that. So that's pathetic in itself. So when we talk about the problem, then we just speak about all the problem that we're having because of the transfer of the ambulance system into the fire department system. And believe it or not, people voted on the tax proposition. I'm not going to get to that point. Next, everybody else have any comments?
Well, you should get there. Response to all of this. From my experience, Director Giles isn't allowed to do his job. Roy is not allowed to do his job. The firemen, the EMT, aren't allowed to do their jobs. That's why it's not working, because people don't want it to work. And now we come to this point. And for the president to sit up there, and say that we raise the fees, the rates, and it's a burden on the taxpayer. It's Medicare and Medicaid. That's who pays it. The insurance companies pay it. Not a dime comes out from the residents or constituents of this parish. So for you to make that statement is totally absurd. And I can't believe that's the message that's going out to our constituency, because we had this exact discussion when we raised the rates. The rates are still lower than the regional average. And yet not a dime is charged to the constituents. And that was brought up on a presentation. It was very clear. And I want to say we voted unanimously to raise those rates. I may be wrong, but it passed. And probably unanimously. So to make a statement that this council raised rates and it affects our constituency, makes them pay the money, is a lie. That's it.
The fact of the matter is, first of all, you made an allegation, Councilman Black, that this administration has done something to prevent, that's baseless without any, to the contrary. We are doing what we can to try to alleviate some of these problems. And that's why we had this discussion about the special treatment, treating every district, every service department on more equal footing. So where we're not just putting all of our eggs in one basket, but also looking at fire department and EMS. The fact is that the fees were raised, and that cannot be controverted. And you're correct. And I made the statement that many of, and I don't have a percentage because I don't have those numbers here before me. I'm sure Chief Roy can get those numbers, but it is a high percentage of the members of our community who use the ambulance services also fall under those categories of Medicare and Medicaid. And so we've had discussions. The billing procedures for Medicare and Medicaid are not, it's not the same as just sending a bill to someone's house. There's more red tape, there's more paperwork that has to be done. And I trust that Chief Roy and the fire department they're doing the best they can, given the situation in which they find themselves.
Right. Councilman Black. Thank you, sir. And this council had a proposal a year or so ago to bring in a third-party company to do those billings. And they guaranteed us an increase in revenue. They guaranteed us a recovery, at a certain percentage. So that hasn't been done. So I'm not sure why that hasn't been done, as we just talked about a minute ago. The second thing is, you say you want to see this, help this merger and change it. We requested information to do a proposal to see if we should outsource emergency medical services via Acadian or West Jeff. West Jeff is still waiting on that information. We were told that the administration was not going to provide them with the information that they needed to give us an assessment. I had to pretty much beg for the information that Acadian requested. I went directly to the chief through your office, in which I got partial information, and then they had to estimate the rest of the information because they said, well, we just can't find the boxes and we don't have time to do it. So, and that took about 4 weeks to do. And I finally got it after I sent an email pretty much threatening a public information request be submitted by my office to obtain that information. So all we asked for, and I think West Jeff is still waiting for their information, is provide us with the data so that they can give us a proposal so this council can make a decision on whether or not it's more effective and more efficient to outsource emergency medical services or not. So, no, there has not been a level of cooperation.
Councilman Black, if I may, you made the statement that West Jeff was awaiting information. From where did you obtain that information? From whom?
From the members of the Plaquemines Medical Center, who I didn't meet personally with West Jeff. Other council members did. And I'm not sure if anyone wants to chime in and kind of...
That's interesting. That's interesting because Plaquemines Medical Center was requested and they would have the power to provide these services as in other parishes. They specifically refused the invitation to become involved. So they would have no knowledge, but that is incorrect. Whoever provided that information to you was incorrect. We're waiting information from West Jeff, and without going any further, because of the delicacy of the nature of these negotiations, there is a non-disclosure in place.
Mr. Reset.
So the information, the same information has been provided to Acadian and to West Jeff so they can compete for the proposal?
I have had no discussions. I've had greater discussions with West Jeff than I've had with Acadian. No one from Acadian has approached me. That was.
You were invited to a meeting.
Ms. Williams.
So you might not have attended any meeting or anything. So having said that, someone in your administration is providing information to Acadian for them to be able to put a proposal together. Now, if it's the fire chief or whoever it may be, I think that it's time for you to have a discussion with that individual to find out what information he has provided and to whom he has provided that, so that we can be on the same page with the proposal from both entities, being West Jeff, Acadian, and any other entity that may be interested in providing those services.
We provided the information to Councilman Black, who then distributed it, I would assume, to Acadian.
Yeah, I can get that.
Excuse me, can I get Ms. Williams? She's waiting.
No, I'm fine.
Okay, finish by saying that, Councilman Black's responsibility to provide that to Acadian is fine. However, I believe that we should be on a fair playing field and both entities have the same information. So if Councilman Black provided something to Acadian, who's to be competing with West Jeff, I would provide, or ask that you provide that information to one of us who would like to forward that to West Jeff, so that everybody's on the same playing field.
I'd be more than glad to. Like I said, Councilman Black has it, Chief Raw has it, but I'd be more than glad.
Does West Jefferson have it, is my question.
No, because
I don't know the answer to that question. The request came from Councilman Black. As exactly what West Jeff has, I've been cooperating with them. So.
Well, let me say this. I suggest that the administration put a proposal together with the same information and solicit, either by negotiation or request for proposals, and if it's a professional service, you can negotiate the issue on this issue with at least those two entities, so we all can have the response based on the same information that's being provided to them. And I'm going to leave it at that.
Yeah, and I'm going to answer a couple of your questions, Ms. Russo, because those questions were asked 6-8 months ago. You sat in a meeting with Ms. Press and amongst other council members with Les Jeff. I was not involved in those meetings with Les Jeff. I also sat in meetings with you and other council members with Acadian. Two different companies with two different types of business models who wanted to give us proposals to outsource emergency medical services. I said at the time, and Ms. Press, we'll get you the information you need to compile data and give us a basic roundabout number of what it would cost to do that. The same conversation was had 6 or 8 months ago with West Jeff. At that meeting, Ms. Press told us specifically that she was not allowed to give out any information, that she didn't have the information, she was struggling to get the information. Everyone on the board, on the hospital board, was struggling to get the information because they were being roadblocked by folks with inside the administration. That's when I sent an email to the fire chief, and asked him for the specific information. I still wasn't provided it. That's when I asked you in writing to provide that information, or I would do a public information request. I was doing it to provide the information on behalf of Ms. Press to Acadian. I never had the discussions with West Jeff. And I agree that all that information is something, it's all public information, so it's nothing that's, has any improprieties or whatever for contracts. That information is requested by West Jeff, requested by Acadian. They were having trouble getting the information that was requested, so I said, I'll step in and I'll get the information. I can forward the same information to West Jeff or to you, Mr. Russo, to forward to West Jeff.
My point.
All right. Let's see if I can figure this out. All right. Mr. Russo?
No matter what happened in the past and wherever we are today, all I'm asking that is that the administration, through its legal department, gather the same information and go out and negotiate for proposals or ask for RFPs for the services, and everybody start fresh tomorrow morning on this new page so we can find out if we can benefit the system by outsourcing. That's, I don't want to get back into arguing about what happened yesterday or tomorrow. This is the day that I'm looking for.
Mr. President?
We've gotten far afield from these budget hearings, but I have to address the inaccuracies. The reason why this administration and charter is clear who the chief executive officer is, but the reason why this administration has meetings and has had meetings with West Jeff is because their business model as a hospital, there is a reason or an incentive for them to subsidize our ambulance services. Acadian just provides ambulance services. I know of no reason whatsoever why they would want to subsidize our services. The business model for West Jeff is get more patients to their hospital, and then they make money, recoup their investment on the back end. And so that's why I appreciate the collaboration of the council members who did work with me through the chief executive officer, as opposed to, people going off on their own, lone soldiers, and trying to have discussions apart from this administration.
Recess for lunch.